League of Legends, The Lord of the Thousand Year War. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 376, God-killing power, Energy Crystal Tower. Without any feeling of fear or dread, Lester also sat in the opposite position, letting the two skulls roll and massage on his shoulders. The man even took the initiative to pick up one and played with it. The skulls seemed to have their own lives and their expressions changed. Lester actually saw the meaning of flattery. If I remember correctly, one of them seemed to be a certain Heidi just now. No matter which world it is, only the weak have no right to speak. They didn't survive Lila's attack and didn't even have the qualifications to talk, let alone talk with themselves on an equal footing. For the weak, this is a desperate journey from hell. The skulls and blasphemous things are life-threatening threats, while for the strong, this is a good opportunity to obtain new information and new opportunities. If necessary, they can even kill Lily to get what they want. For now, whether to take action or not still needs to understand some information first. Thinking about the next course of action in his mind, Lester was smiling. After all, I have a good friend whom I don't know who also has blue-purple skin. Although his skin color is very strange, that guy is more like a human being than anyone else. He is honest, kind and responsible. He always looks serious like a savior. He appears to be very indifferent and doesn't want anyone to get close to him, but he is willing to bring his kindness to everyone he can help. Perhaps because of this, I have never cared much about skin color, and I will not judge others based on their appearance. Good qualities are as precious as gold. Not many people know how to not judge others by their appearance. Most people only believe in the most superficial things. Even if these things are deliberately displayed by others as scams, fools will believe them. But then again, an unknown good friend, Lester, it seems that you also have a fascinating experience. If I have the chance, I really want to listen to it. But now I think you are full of questions. If you are willing to listen to an ancient and long story, and willing to listen to the chatter of an old guy who is almost 1,000 years old, I'm all ears. But in my opinion, Lily, you are still very young. The time you have been sleeping does not represent your real age. My good friend is the real old guy. He is old-fashioned and experienced. Compared with him, you are just a little girl. Haha, although I know you are complimenting me, I'm still very happy, because you are a happy person. They got to know each other, and as the atmosphere became more and more friendly, Lily, with a flushed face, finally opened up. As for Lester, he didn't know why Lily looked overly excited when she just chatted with him. He didn't say anything flirtatious. From the memories of the Heidi people, I learned that more than 900 years have passed since the demise of the Atlantes. Now Narxus in the east of Valoran uses the Narxan AD calendar. Am I right? Yes, this year is the 22nd AD in the Narxan calendar. The Shurima Empire that flourished 1,000 years ago has declined. Valoran has experienced the Darkin War, the cruel rule of the Dark Tyrant, and the Rune War. Countless civilizations and races are buried under the earth. After more than 100 years of peace, the races of Valoran have once again multiplied. Now that the countries coexist, a new round of war is breaking out, and my country is the invader. Lily sneered after hearing what Lester said. Oh, even if another 10,000 years, a million years, or 100 million years pass, the war on Valoran will not stop. The whole world is nothing more than a playground and testing ground for the gods. The more glorious and powerful the civilization, the faster it dies. Humans are weeds to the gods. No matter how many times they are harvested, weeds will grow back tenaciously. We Atlanteans love peace. For more than 300 years, we have never actively expanded or invaded others. We have created countless magical facilities to facilitate life. In addition to elemental mages who are born with magical talents, we have also invented attributeless magic. Attributeless magic allows ordinary people without magic talent to generate the 4 basic element through the element conversion furnace, and the 4 basic element are then transformed into specific magic facilities through special magic generators. The convenience of life for the Atlan people is far beyond your imagination. Have you heard of energy crystal powered cars, magic elevator shafts, and magic stoves? Have you ever seen a stove that generates flames by turning a button, and a magic crystal car that can fly through round crystals? Although he wanted to say that the technology of the world before he traveled through time was not inferior to that of magic stove, Lester was still willing to let Lily use a little pride to despise the castrated era now. After all, what Lily said was the truth, provided that the magic craftsmanship of the Atlan people could really reach that level. And Lily was still full of resentment. You who are still using slash and burn farming and simple rune magic can't imagine how advanced the magic technology we use is. Whether in life or in the military field, we have achieved unparalleled achievements. And I know from my memory that the people living in the Dalmor Plains are called what by the Valorans? Barbarians. You are actually called barbarians without their own history and civilization. If someone tells us Atlanteans that we are barbarians, we will stuff him into an energy furnace to refine his limited intelligence. Whether it is Unarxans or other races in the Dalmor Plains, you have returned to primitive farming and nomadism. More than 1,000 years ago, we on that land flew in the sky on crystal powered cars, and 1,000 years later, you on that land ride on the backs of cattle and horses and wave whips. In my opinion, the current magical research results of Valoran are at least 500 years behind ours. Using the Narxan calendar to calculate the time, the average living standard of Valoran today is about 1700 years BC. In other words, the people of Valoran 1700 years ago lived the same standard of life as you. For nearly 2000 years, the level of magic in Valoran has not improved at all, and has always been stagnant. So, is this the reason why the gods destroyed you? Lily took a deep breath and shook her head. Not entirely. After all, from God's perspective, what we have achieved is nothing more than a beautiful garden planted from seeds that were casually scattered. Although beautiful, it poses no threat, so there is naturally no need to eradicate it, as long as the flowers in the garden are allowed to be picked, studied, and fiddled with by the gods. In fact, we have long observed the various means that the gods have deployed in the material realm. How could we, who are so proud, tolerate such a thing? The gods are always loyal to their own desires, and they maintain an endless curiosity about all kinds of magic and technology produced in this world. The only thing that must not be touched is the power of Godslayer. It is because we possess the power of Godslayer that we have incurred irresistible disasters, and even our glorious civilizations have been directly wiped out by the gods. The power of Godslayer? I heard you say that I also possess the power of Godslayer. So it seems that the power of Godslayer is not limited to a certain kind of power, right? Lily nodded to Lester and said seriously, "You're right. In the eyes of us Atlanteans, any power that threatens the survival of the gods can be called the power of gods. The method we came up with to fight against the gods is to build an energy crystal tower that is 100 meters high. As long as we have enough magical energy, the energy attack of the crystal tower can directly penetrate the star barrier set up by the gods, ignoring all the magical defenses and divine power shields set up by the gods, and completely destroy the gods' bodies." Lester's pupils shrank. Chapter 377 Human Dignity. If we use the information in the game to consider the energy crystal tower mentioned by Lily, there is no doubt that the most similar one is the various defense towers placed in the canyon in the game. The defense tower has the functions of ignoring defense, gradually increasing damage, and anti-stealth. It can be said that no matter how powerful the heroes are in the early stage, they can't fight the attack of the defense tower alone. As for the laser defense tower in the fountain, it is even more ill damage. In addition to stacking blood volume, any hero with thin blood will be killed instantly by the laser. It is truly invincible. Even in the technological era of the previous life, America, which has mastered the world's top military technology, has also created a planetary level disintegration weapon, Apocalypse, with high energy laser beam as the core technology in the field of space warfare. In addition to the mature space-based kinetic weapons, Wand of Zeus, and electromagnetic guns Valkyrie. It is worth mentioning that whether it is Wand of Zeus, Valkyrie, or Apocalypse, when they have nothing to do, they will turn their heads towards a certain E-station power to show respect. After the Planetary Anti-Nuclear Interception Network was created, the East Asian power became the imaginary enemy that America always kept a high level of vigilance against. It can be said that, if the Earth is hit by a world-destroying asteroid, using nuclear bombs to eliminate the threat is the worst option, and using laser weapons to destroy the asteroid is the right answer. If the energy tower with the power to kill gods mentioned by Lily is a high-energy laser converted from magic energy, and the gods are the star spirits with constellations as their bodies, it does make sense. After a long silence, the shocked Lester asked, "Lily, what kind of existence is the god you mentioned?" Knowing that the man had absorbed what she said, Lily's face flashed with a little pride, and then filled with hatred. They are a group of incarnations of the laws of power that stole the power of creation, and were born among the stars. We call them all constellation spirits. We don't know much about them, but we know that every constellation spirit has an infinite lifespan. They don't have any human emotions. They are only loyal to their own laws and characteristics, and live in the starry sky. Discoveries in astronomy have taught us that, if we want to kill them, we must destroy their bodies far away in the starry sky. After research, we found that the energy beams of the energy tower have unlimited potential. As long as there are enough energy reserves, the energy beams have the potential to destroy stars. So you built the energy crystal tower. So we secretly built the energy crystal tower underground, and used the energy crystal tower to lock onto a star god with the weakest strength, the smallest star and the closest distance through space magic, and successfully destroyed him with an energy beam. Lily was a little excited, and then an indelible sadness and a deep fear emerged on her face. After the stars were destroyed, the star gods who felt the fatal threat finally became terrified. First, 3 huge luminous bodies with unclear faces and surrounded by starlight flashed and circled above our country, and then the disaster fell from the sky without them even saying a word. In an instant, endless meteorites and flames fell from the sky and hit our country accurately, destroying all our magical defense facilities, including the capital, Atlantis, and the main city, Erin, where the Crystal Tower was built. The 4 main cities were instantly buried in the endless flames, and tens of millions of Atlanteans died directly. The earth that was hit cracked into the abyss, and the sea flowed out of the abyss. We had nowhere to hide, and nowhere to escape. The wrath of God is fire, and we finally understood this, but God did not give us any chance to beg for mercy. Even the 2 large underground refuge cities built in advance to deal with the attack of the gods were found by the star gods. Hundreds of thousands of people, including the Atlantean wise men and young wizard elites who had moved in long ago, died, buried deep underground. No one survived. Only this small underground mineral crystal research institute under the Goral Mountains is still surviving. Perhaps it is because the mineral crystals in the mine have long been exhausted, or perhaps it is because there are only the last 4,523 people left here, or perhaps it is far from the north. In short, this place has not been found by the star gods, and there is a group of people who are lingering and carrying hatred for the fallen country. I admire your courage to fight against the gods. I have to say, this is really regrettable. Lily shook her head at Lester's sigh. There is nothing to regret. Long before we took action, we had guessed that this would be the result, but we do not regret it. In the conference hall, no one opposed the issue of attacking the gods, except the king of Bodom. The only vote against was that the king was worried that his people would be harmed. In the end, the king respected the choice of his people. From the moment Atlan established its foothold in the world, we were destined not to succumb to anyone, even if they were the high and mighty gods who could not be disobeyed. We would never allow the noble people of Atlan to be slaughtered like livestock by those gods. The reason why humans are great is that humans will do things that they know will destroy themselves, but they will still do them. Death is not terrible, but what is terrible is losing one's pride and dignity. In this world, there are always some things that humans need to do. Other countries can surrender, but Atlan cannot. Other races can laugh and throw the missing persons investigation records into the furnace, but Atlan cannot. Even if he dies, Atlan will let those high and mighty gods know that there is a group of ants who are willing to pay any price to bite off a piece of noble meat. We just regret that we couldn't build more crystal towers to destroy multiple star gods at once. Lester turned his eyes away from the hateful Lily and looked at most of the blasphemous things in the hall that he had destroyed. The ominous crimson firelight was still trying to illuminate this not so large space. The hideous livestock-shaped blasphemous door was still blocking the only entrance and exit. The weird-shaped butcher knives and iron whips were still dangling in the air, doing nothing. What is evil? What is horror? Dancing skeletons are terrifying. Human oil candlesticks are terrifying. Or is it terrifying to make skin, flesh, and bones into various works of art? Compared with the stars who casually destroy the lives of tens of millions of people, which of these things is more terrifying? Just like in the previous life, is it more terrifying to be a robber robbing a bank with a pistol, or is it more terrifying to be a capital oligarch lying in a single family villa in the manor, and owning a business empire built by squeezing ordinary people and sucking the blood of the country? Lester knew that there was no need to give an answer to this question, because there would be no second answer to this question. The threat posed by the former could be solved by a few armed policemen, while the threat posed by the latter would last for several generations, allowing him and his family to be above billions of people and control half of the world with power. With a sigh, Lester said softly, "Lily, how did you survivors get to this point? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 378 Friends with a Common Enemy. The Mineral Crystal Research Institute has complete living facilities. At first, we were going to live in hiding and wait for the right time to return to the surface to rebuild Atlan. Until we found an evil altar in a secret room deep in the mine. After research, we gave up the unrealistic idea of restoring the country and prepared to take revenge with all our strength. Altar? Can you describe it? It's probably like this. Lily manipulated the flesh and bones to form a blasphemous object with flesh as a base, bones as pillars, and swollen meat eggs as the main body. The meat eggs were covered with thick blood vessels and nerves like a heart, and looked very sad. Lester was also a little confused. He didn't know whether he should regard the altar as a product of Cthulhu or a creation of hell. In short, it didn't look like a native product of Runeland. It was still unknown whether it was a bad place. Waving her hand to dismantle the temporarily assembled altar, Lily sat back on the skeleton bench and sighed. The altar I created is less than 1/10 of the real altar. The real altar is truly majestic, with thick blood vessels connecting the entire chamber like a fungal blanket. It was then that we understood the real reason for the rapid depletion of the mineral crystals. A long time ago, the meat eggs in the altar continued to absorb the mineral crystal veins silently through the living chamber, using the magical energy in the mineral crystals to nurture the things in the meat eggs. Based on the changes in the frequency of the meat eggs beating and absorption of energy, our researchers found that the meat eggs had reached saturation and were about to hatch. Coincidentally, I was chosen by Soviet and the meat eggs and learned about the altar's Vonva, Jodajogov. After discussion, we decided to use Miazub with the help of Maganvayas. Stop, Lily, don't you realize you are speaking another language now? Lily was stunned for a moment, then frowned. Soviet, Vonva. No, I can't express what I know in normal language. I can only express some key information in another language. It seems that there should be some kind of law involving confidentiality. Your race has now separated from humans, so it will naturally be bound by the law. I'm no longer a human now. Lily lowered her head, looking a little depressed. Whether you are a human or not does not depend on your appearance, but on whether you have a human heart. I see indomitable and fearless in you Atlanteans, which are qualities that many people do not have. Thank you, Lester. After a long silence, Lily came out of her low mood. In short, a blood crystal belonging to another world was hatched in the meat egg of the altar. The altar withered and died after the meat egg broke, but for us, a blood crystal is enough. With a self-deprecating smile, Lily looked at the bone flute in her hand. Since we have given up living in hiding underground and have chosen to give up everything to take revenge on the star god, we have begun to arrange the sacrificial venue according to the evil knowledge from another world on the blood crystal. We have sacrificed the lives of more than 4,000 people and successfully used the evil power on the blood crystal to turn myself into this alien. I need to survive and take the identity of another unknown race and use their power to take revenge on the star god. In fact, we have long considered that later generations will use energy crystals to find the ruins of Atlantis to obtain our advanced magic craftsmanship, so we buried a complete energy crystal under the floor tiles of the sacrificial hole as bait, so that the sacrificial hole can obtain the sacrifice to activate my mutated necrotic body, allowing me to be reborn. So, among so many people, why did you choose an old guy? Pucci Lily smiled brightly. Because only his consciousness and body are the weakest. I suppressed his soul in an instant. To be honest, I wanted to influence you directly, but I'm afraid I'll die in your hands as soon as I start. Lester, you're not a soft-hearted guy. That's right, I'm more ruthless than anyone else. Whoever dares to provoke me, I promise that he won't see the sun the next day. Lester smiled back, and the two looked at each other. The next second, they both laughed happily at the same time. The atmosphere became much happier, and even the scary skeleton curved its eyebrows and made its teeth into the shape of. Just like that, my reincarnation was successful this time. Although I can't become a human, I can vaguely connect with the world over there. Next, I will explore the world over there as much as possible and find a way to use the power over there to complete my revenge. Lily, I respect your decision. What's more, I want to say that I actually hate those star gods as well. Over the years, I have been trying to find a way to fight against them. Maybe I'm still just an insignificant bug in their eyes. They haven't done anything to me yet, but there is an irreconcilable contradiction between them and me. You and I have a common enemy. If possible, I think we can become close allies. You bring me the intelligence and power of the world over there, and I manage the forces in the material realm for you. After all, I'm also a Lord of Naxos. There are always some things that we can match and exchange with each other. What do you think? Lily smiled and agreed to Lester's proposal. I feel trust from you, and this trust is precious, so I'm willing to believe you. Lester, we are indeed the same kind of people. Since I knew that you have the power to kill gods, I knew that you would be my companion. In fact, you did not disappoint me. I can even say that you are more perfect than I imagined. The atmosphere became a little charming for a while, and even the eyes of the skeleton turned into peach hearts. While the conversation was not completely over, Lester hurriedly brought up a new topic to prevent Lily from proposing specific conditions for the alliance with her actions. In this case, it was difficult for him to refuse. By the way, Lily, you said that I have the power to kill gods. I want to know if you Atlan people have unique insights into the power I have. Did you also have world runes in your era? World runes. Is this what people call roots now? Roots? Is this the root you are talking about? Lily took the red rune that Lester took out from the rune altar at the bottom of the Lake of the Soul with both hands, feeling the power surging in the rune and recalling the past days. We have also explored the origin of this world. The wisest group of great sages went deep underground, hoping to find some secrets of the origin of the world. Through magic detection crystals, we finally found that the origin of all magic comes from deep underground, which is a realm we cannot reach at all. There are some things born in the center of the earth that constitute the extraordinary laws of this world. After discussion, we call it the root. Chapter 379 Military Merit at your fingertips. The sun slowly rose from the east side of the mountain. When Lester returned to the surface, he just climbed up the mountain and saw Malfeulin bullying Miss Long. Relying on her body that can be transformed into shadow at any time, Malfeulin squatted and jumped on Miss Long's head with an evil smile. Whenever the irritable Miss Long slapped her head with her dragon claws, Malfeulin escaped into the shadow realm and let Miss Long give her head a blast. When Miss Long's head was slapped by her, Malfeulin returned to the material realm, stood beside the dizzy Miss Long's ear and laughed triumphantly, and insulted Miss Long as a big stupid dragon. Just like a fair judge, a pair of eyes full of wisdom and justice took everything in their eyes, and remembered the evil deeds of a certain cat in their hearts. Until the moment of judgment came, a silent hand pinched the back of Malfeulin's neck, and Malfeulin's smiling face gradually stiffened. With her fluid body drooping like noodles, Mao Fuelin was brought to her by a man with wolf ears with an expressionless face. Stared at by the man, Mao Fuelin's smile became more and more forced. That, master, you are back. My Evelyn, what do you think this is? The man with wolf ears used his other free hand to shake the soul pyroxene that was emitting colorful light in the sun. Attracted by the cat luring scent, Mao Fuelin opened her mouth and was about to say something, but drooled at the corner of her mouth. However, she saw the soul pyroxene draw a perfect arc and fell into the hands of Miss Long, who was a little aggrieved. Miss Long, who subconsciously caught the soul pyroxene, looked at the man and scratched her head. The man smiled gently at Miss Long, and the moment he turned his head back, a malicious smile appeared on his face again. Look, the soul pyroxene of a certain demon cat snapped, and it's gone. After being hit by the man's fatal attack, the cat's golden pupils gradually lost focus. 3 seconds later, bean-sized shadow tears flowed from the corners of its eyes. The demon power seriously damaged the ecological environment, leaving a corroded hole in the hard stone. The crying cat Fuelin wailed, while kicking her legs. Wow. Master, you bully me. Crying is useless. Who told you to bully Zaya? From now on, I will give your soul candy beans to Zaya for keeping. This is the price you pay for bullying people. Moreover, you must not forcibly rob or steal. Once I find out that you got something from Zaya in an improper way, you will never have candy beans to eat again. Master, I was wrong. Zaya, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Hearing Lester say this, Evelyn cried even louder, but Miss Long Zaya came over and scratched her head a little embarrassedly. Lester, why don't we just forget it? Lester rubbed Zaya's head, stared at the shy and timid Miss Long, and said softly with some pity for Miss Long, it's okay. I have always spoiled Evelyn too much. It's better to teach Evelyn a lesson. It's up to you to decide whether to give Evelyn the soul pyroxene. I'll listen to Lester. Seeing Lester being so gentle to Zaya, Mao Fuelin pursed her lips unwillingly. Darmoplein, Northernburg, which belongs to Naxos. An Naxos military meeting concerning the war in the next 6 months is being held in a solemn atmosphere. In the Lord's Hall, the generals of the Emerald Lord and the Supreme Command sat around the long table, and the candlesticks emitted a warm dim light. Sitting in the first place were the Legion Commander Margaret and the leader of the war group Vakul. At this moment, Margaret's expression was slightly unchanged, and her tone was a little heavier. General Vakul, excuse me for being blunt, but the support agreement between the Emerald Territory and the Supreme Command did not mention that we should join the siege against Fkerd. Isn't your request a bit excessive at this moment? Facing Margaret's unfriendly attitude, Vakul knew that he was in the wrong, and bowed his head and said sincerely, General Margaret, this is by no means a demand, but a request. I certainly understand that this request has exceeded the part negotiated between the Emerald Territory and Naxos, but I'm sure you can also see that after the anti-climax Shelly Fortress Defense War, the Frost Kingdom is already at the end of its strength. The defeated soldiers who experienced a great rout will not recover their combat effectiveness without a month of rest. With the Emerald Territory's powerful military force and siege weapons, only a conventional siege battle is needed to capture Forkeld and destroy the Frost Kingdom. My people have already contacted the defectors who are lurking around Jelena and have long wanted to join Naxos. When you attack head-on, my regiment soldiers and I can directly break into the palace and capture Jelena alive. Such a great military exploit is within easy reach. General Margaret, if this succeeds, I'm willing to give Jelena and the main results to the Emerald Territory. The Vakul regiment only needs some minor achievements and a man's head. There is no need to continue the hatred left over from Shelly Fortress. We can end it all before this autumn. The remaining Hedi people will be dealt with by us. After we take over Hedi City, General Margaret will send someone to take over. Margaret frowned and began to weigh the pros and cons. It has to be said that what Vakul said was attractive enough. More than 20 years of military experience made Margaret know that Vakul would never dare to use some inferior means in such matters. Now the Emerald Territory Support Corps has become the well-deserved Naxos main force on the Damo Plain. Even if Vakul really took Jelena's head with his own hands, no one would say that it was the credit of the Res family. They would only say that the Res family benefited from the Emerald Territory. If what Vakul said was true, and the traitors of the Frost Kingdom were ready to respond to the attack of Naxos, then the Emerald Territory would only need to approach the city, set up its formation, use siege crossbows and some captured prisoners as cannon fodder, to attract the attention of the defenders of Fked, and let Vakul and his soldiers sneak into the city to capture Yelena. When the inner city was in chaos, the Frost Kingdom rebels opened the city gates, and the Emerald Territory could directly enter the city, and announce that Fked was occupied by the Emerald Territory. As long as the operation was done properly, the Emerald Territory would not lose a single soldier in the whole process, to get the credit for conquering Fked. At that time, even the Supreme Command would not find any reason to take Fked from the Emerald Territory. The only problem was that, if the two ancient cities of Mingsu, Fked and Hiti City, located in the Damo Plain, and the North Sea were occupied at the same time, the Emerald Territory would inevitably make some powerful people in Naxos jealous, and even the Supreme Command would have a grudge. However, given the current size of the Emerald Territory, it really didn't need to care about these. Chapter 380 Return, aiming at Fokeld. Even though it was a good deal to follow Vakul Rezus's proposal, no matter how you consider it, Margaret still decided to refuse it for only one reason. She needed the military force of the Emerald Territory to go to Ionia to find Leistat's trace. If necessary, the Emerald Territory's army would set foot on the land of Ionia in the form of conquest. At that time, there would be more enemies and greater dangers, so it was not realistic to leave part of the legion to Alice and let Alice help Vakul take down Fokeld instead of herself. Only a complete legion can exert the strength that exceeds the sum of the legions. With the current military organization of the Emerald Territory, no matter which type of arms, they are indispensable. How can a decision that has been made before be changed? She is loyal to the Emerald Territory, but the reason for her loyalty to the Emerald Territory is that she has always been loyal to only one man. The Emerald Territory without Leistat is meaningless. Even if the sky falls, no one can stop her from looking for Leistat. General Vakul, unfortunately, except for Alice who will continue to stay in Northenburg to contain the Hidi people, the rest of the Emerald Territory will gradually withdraw from the Damo Plain. Therefore, I cannot agree to your request for troops. This is not in the agreement between the Emerald Territory and the Supreme Command. Even though the anxious Alice kept hinting at her, Margaret still seriously rejected Vakul's proposal. When Vakul Rezus made such a humble request, she still refused with such a tough and arrogant attitude. This was undoubtedly a heavy slap on Vakul's face. Mr. Legion Commander, such an opportunity is rare. Would you like to consider it again? Seeing that Vakul's face became extremely ugly, Alice reminded him in a low voice. Don't think about it. Compared with seizing Fked, the Emerald Territory has more important things to do. Margaret's voice remained as indifferent and cold as ever, and there was no doubt about it. The atmosphere was extremely stiff. The words had already been said to this point, and it was meaningless for both parties to continue talking. Joai, who was sitting below Vakul, looked at the cold-faced Vakul with concern, feeling a little nervous. Even in Shelly Fortress, he had never seen Vakul show such an expression. There was no doubt that the anger of the Naxan general had reached its peak at this moment. Anyway, I owe the Emerald leader 2 favors this time. Thank you General Margaret for your hospitality. Roy, let's go. Standing up from his seat, Vakul Rezus, with an expressionless face, came to the door and opened the heavy iron inlaid wooden door with force. What he saw was a face that was both familiar and unfamiliar. Next to the young man was a foreign woman who was more than 2 meters tall. These two people blocked his way. He stared at the man for a few seconds, always feeling that he should know the person in front of him. Vakul could not remember who he was in front of. Frowning at the guards outside the door who were in charge of security, the soldiers of the Emerald Territory had a tangled look of suspicion and admiration, with such rich expressions and brilliant faces that it was rare to see in a century. One soldier even took out a gold coin from the Emerald Territory and kept checking between the portrait side of the coin and the man. Naturally knowing whose face was cast on the portrait side of the coin, the frowning Vakul's face suddenly became a little doubtful, and he couldn't help but take 2 steps back, just exposing the man to the eyes of everyone in the hall. Even though the man's clothes and temperament had a new difference, the 2 women recognized him at a glance. Margaret and Alice, with mixed emotions, stood up directly, and the precious mink mahogany chair was knocked to the ground. The two women, with calm faces but turbulent hearts, looked at each other, briefly exchanged their thoughts, and suppressed the joy of reunion deep in their hearts. With two dong dong sounds, the two legion commanders of the Emerald Territory knelt on one knee and bowed their heads at the same time. Their right hands passed from bottom to top and stopped at their left chests, performing the supreme etiquette of the Emerald Territory to the man. Lord Lester. Lord. Whether it was the newly promoted officers of the Emerald Territory who were used to the majesty of the Legion commander in the hall, or the new recruits outside the door who had never seen the real face of the Lord except for the mask and the gold coin portrait, their mouths were like eggs stuffed in their mouths, and could not be closed. One soldier even accidentally tore the corner of his mouth, because he was too shocked. For a moment, he didn't know whether he should wipe it. All the untrue rumors circulating in the Emerald Territory were broken. Lord Lester appeared in Northenberg. As for whether the demon lord of the Emerald Territory Fedletry was really Lester, it was no longer important. As long as Lester was alive, no one could overthrow the regime of the Emerald Territory. As if the pause button had been cancelled, the almost frozen time began to flow again. Following Margaret and Alice, the officers and soldiers of the Emerald Territory knelt down and saluted, paying tribute to the supreme leader of the Emerald Territory. Amid the strong reactions of the crowd, Vacal finally confirmed that the young man in front of him, who was only about 20 years old, was Lester, the Lord of the Emerald Territory, who had been established for more than 20 years. The appearance of the middle-aged man under the mask was like a bubble that burst with a poke. His appearance that was getting younger and younger was as awe-inspiring as those profound magic. From then on, in addition to his beautiful wife and rich territory, the Lord of the Emerald Territory might have another enviable characteristic. Everyone, get up. Margaret, put aside the things I asked you to do for the time being, and focus on conquering Forkeld first. Understood. After talking to Margaret, Lester looked at Vacal again, and said in a deep voice, I came all the way from Fidlet this time to inform General Vacal that the Emerald Lord will capture Hades City, and the Emerald Lord's army will help General Vacal capture Forkeld and open up a passage for Narxus to penetrate into Freljord. Hearing Lester say this, Vacal was a little surprised, and quickly pulled Roy to give Lester a military salute. With Vacal's pride, it was not easy to do this willingly. Thank you for your generosity and kindness, Lord. May your iron will be unstoppable and your army be able to march across thousands of miles. Knowing that Vacal was talking about giving up the main credit for capturing Forkeld, Lester continued seriously. General Vacal, you don't have to be so polite. We are all Narxans, and warriors must speak with swords on the battlefield. Before, there were some things in the territory that had to be dealt with. Now the things in the territory have been perfectly resolved. This time the Legion is heading north. We will definitely wipe out all the despicable people who block the Narxan army. It's too early to leave now. Next, please invite General Vacal and General Roy to take a seat. I would like to hear your ideas on how to capture Fkerd. Vacal's mind was shaken by Lester's pat on the shoulder and the majestic momentum in the man's words. Roy, who was silently observing Lester, seemed to recall the terrible pressure brought to him by his father Ursus, who captured the tiger alive when he was still young. It's an honor. Chapter 381 Loyal Political Officer. In the Forkeld Palace, Yelena stood on the right side of the throne and said something to the queen. Yelena's face darkened at a speed visible to the naked eye. In front of the throne, Owen prostrated himself on the ground solemnly, keeping his eyes on his nose and his nose on his heart. The Narxans did not die in the Shelley fortress. Someone was going to be in trouble, but it was not him. Although he was the culprit for the Narxans' survival. Casper, my good wife, only 8,000 were brought back out of 30,000 people. The Shelley fortress was besieged for 3 whole months, but the Narxans still escaped. Yelena stood up, drew out her gorgeous jeweled sword, and slowly walked to the man who was crawling on the ground. Raise your head. The sword blade cut the man's neck and blood oozed out. The deadly threat brought by the steel made Casper's muscles tense, but he dared not move. Casper, you really made me look good. Knowing that this was his only chance to explain, Casper went from being ashamed and self-blaming to looking as hen, and said the excuse he had thought of long ago. Queen, I'm willing to pay for my mistakes with my life. I just didn't expect the Hedis to betray us so shamelessly. The withdrawal allowed the Narxans to escape smoothly from the other side. At this point, you are still deceiving me and making excuses for your stupidity. You really disappoint me so much. Casper's body stiffened, and he collapsed to the ground. The queen's tone was no longer cold, but calm. Casper, do you think I don't know your little calculations? The Stugilla people died in the siege of the Hedi and Raxi tribes more than 30 years ago. You want to use my power for revenge. I don't object. I don't even care that you have lied to me a lot, but you should never ever affect Queen Lyssandra's plan because of your own selfish desires. I originally thought you were a smart person. I was totally wrong. I was blind. Queen. Without giving Casper a chance to speak, the long sword cut off the man's head, and the hot blood dyed the dilapidated hall red, which made the other people present, including Owen who had ulterior motives, jump in their hearts. Looking at the man she once loved most with sorrow, Jelena looked around the repaired hall, looked down at the ministers at both ends, and finally sighed, and gave up the idea. She had to admit that she was not suitable to be a queen at all. It was more suitable for her to lead the tribe to fight, and herd for a living as a war mother. Thinking of this, Jelena took off the copper crown on her head, kissed it gently, and threw it directly to the ground. The kingdom fell to the ground with a crisp sound of metal, and everyone else was stunned. The Frost Kingdom was originally a barrier to block the Narxan army. Now the kingdom has suffered heavy casualties and is crumbling. The soldiers of Narxus will definitely not miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Even if we have to evacuate, we must make the Narxans pay a sufficient price. Hearing this, Owen's heart was beating fast, and he didn't know what Jelena was up to. Jelena continued, I have sent people to the ancient city of Miladia to seek support from the Callis. Within a month before the arrival of the Callis, we must defend Fked at all costs. After that, Fked will be handed over to the Callis, and we will withdraw to the Black Iron Castle and gather people again. Hearing the ancient city of Miladia, they already had a bad premonition. After hearing the word Callis, everyone's face changed drastically. The ancient city of Miladia, made of cold iron, is located at the top of the Ironbreak Mountains. There are mountain tunnels on the top of the mountain that connect most of the Ironbreak Mountains. A group of crazy people live in the ancient city. After decades of evolution, outsiders have developed a rich cannibal culture under the condition of extreme food scarcity, making the Ironbreak Mountains a forbidden place for outsiders. Men will be caught and eaten directly, and women will be eaten after giving birth to enough offspring and losing their fertility. It can be said to be a devil's cave on earth. Perhaps it is hunting for their own kind, or the ancient city of Miladia itself has a terrible curse. Every Callis living in the ancient city and the underground of the mountains has an invulnerable physique and a short body that is not afraid of pain. These people always like to decorate their barbarity with bloody animal skins and horn helmets, so the Callis are also called beastmen. The Callis who occupied the ancient city are bloodthirsty butchers without discounts, except that their brains are a little bit not very smart. Of course, the activities of the Callis are limited to the Iron Mountains. If they leave the Iron Mountains, they will be killed by the nearby settlements. No one likes man-eating beasts running down from the mountains to look for food. In fact, the Iron Mountains originally belonged to the territory of the Frost Kingdom, and it was Jelena who issued the hunting order to protect the Iron Mountains. Callis? Queen, do we want to seek help from those man-eating beasts? Queen, please reconsider. The beasts in Callis can't communicate at all. If we let the Callis go down from the mountains, our people will suffer first. Everyone, the Frost Kingdom has lost its original meaning. This is why I took off the crown. From now on, there is no Queen Jelena, only War Mother Jelena. Jelena's voice was flat, but Owen heard a hint of madness in her calm voice. Sure enough, when she opened her mouth again, Jelena's voice instantly became excited. No matter what the cost. Remember, it's any cost. We must stop the Narxans who have mastered the dark power south of the Iron Mountains. Not to mention letting the Callis go down the mountain. Even if we all die here, we must stop the Narxans. So, stop talking useless nonsense. Unless you have a better way to stop nearly 30,000 Narxans. Among them is the terrible Emerald Territory. The noisy voices disappeared completely. Even the bravest warriors did not dare to say that they had a way to stop the attack of 30,000 people with a broken city and 10,000 people. As early as when the Emerald Territory became famous in the Valoran continent, the controllers of various forces understood that the Emerald Territory, which had mastered the Angel's blessing, was definitely not an object to be provoked. Seeing that everyone finally shut up, Yelena looked at the loyal political officer who had always been respectful and obedient to her. Owen, you will be in charge of the defense of Khalid from now on, and Lady Yelena will be your deputy. Even though I have so many wives, you are still the most reliable one. Don't let me down. Yes, Queen. I've said it before, there is no queen in Khalid anymore. But in my heart, you are the queen forever. Staring at Owen's sincere eyes, Yelena felt much better. It's the last day, readers. If you still have monthly tickets, please vote. Chapter 382 Fightlets Golden Autumn. Narkson Calendar, May of 22 AD. The Hedi Mage Corps, which had lost its leader Mosley, fought with the new Narkson Warband in Norska Castle. After gaining the upper hand, they took the initiative to retreat and joined General Gugol. 40,000 people successfully withdrew to the Anvil of Carius and confronted the Alice Corps of Northenburg. From time to time, they lined up outside the city for long-range harassment, and both sides suffered casualties. In June of the same year, the Emerald Margaret Corps and the Narkson Warbands led by Vakal formed a coalition and advanced westward. In mid-June, the Narkson coalition army marched to the city of Forkeld. Owen, the political officer and city guard general of the Frost Kingdom, surrendered. The main city was broken, the Frost Kingdom was destroyed, and Forkeld was captured by Narkson General Vakal Rezus. Located on the west side of Forkeld, Yelena, who was recruiting soldiers in the Black Iron Castle, was furious and vowed to make the traitor Rowan pay the price. She began to forcibly recruit soldiers in the villages near the Black Iron Castle, and arrested all those who disobeyed. The leader of the Kalas people, Eric Bloodskull, received thousands of blood food sent by Yelena. After learning that he could wreak havoc on the Damo Plain, he finally agreed to send troops. In early July, Margaret's army returned to Northumberland from Forkeld with a small amount of Legion supplies, waiting for logistical supplies from the Emerald Territory, and preparing to attack the Anvil of Carius and the North Sea Fortress. Upon learning that Margaret had returned to Northumberland, Hedi City's General Guga no longer went out of the city to harass, and with the support of King Mansa, he made full preparations for war, leaving only a small group of explorers still staying in the Goral Mountains to search for the lost Mosley and Atlan underground ruins. In August, Vakal and Roy were divided into two war groups and began to plunder the villages near Fkerd, looting the few supplies and war slaves. The Legion and Yelena's new army began a small-scale fight. In mid-August, more than 10,000 Kalas left the ancient city of Miladia under the leadership of Bullhead General Eric Bloodskull. The Kalas were divided into more than a dozen plundering groups and began to wreak havoc and kill in the Damo Plain, slaughtering villages and capturing blood food and fertile resources. Most of them were transported back to the ancient city of Miladia for breeding and animal husbandry. A small number of women were enslaved and controlled as slaves. Men were made into jerky and dried in the ruins of the village that was not completely burned to the ground, while women were insulted and violated. The western part of the Damo Plain fell into chaos, and everyone was in danger. In September, because two villages outside the city were looted and slaughtered by the Kalasi Beastmen, the neutral city-state, Na, which formed a triangle with the ancient city of Miladia and the Black Iron Castle, finally sent soldiers to fight against the rampant Kalasi people, and successfully repelled the Kalasi people's invasion twice with black gunpowder iron cannons. Influenced by the restless reproductive desire, the bloodthirsty Kalasi people finally retreated from Nurcheng's sphere of influence, and began to breed offspring with the plundered reproductive resources in a dozen occupied villages, causing Yelena, who wanted the Kalasi people to fight against the Narksons, to curse. The arrival of the golden autumn season brought a brief period of peace to the Valoran continent. The Hedis were busy fishing and planting wheat, while the Narksons were in a predicament of lack of labor due to the transition of soldiers' conscription. After two forced conscriptions, because husbands and men of marriageable age were on the battlefield of Damo Plain, the Supreme Command had to let young women and boys carry sickles and hoes. Naxos' national strength and finances were on the verge of collapse, and it was almost at the end of its rope in the continuous wars. It was not until the Emerald Territory lent tens of thousands of Emerald Territory gold coins to the immortal fortress at Naxos, which had obtained capital turnover, got a breathing space. The immortal fortress bought a large number of slaves from the kingdom of Gran in the south, and began to work and harvest under the control of the military, which also allowed the Naxan widows who had obtained men to eliminate some loneliness and life pressure. As for how many Naxan men on the Damoplean were happy to be fathers, it was unknown. In addition to the autumn harvest, the Emerald Territory was also preparing intensively for the northern expedition materials to capture Hedi City. Riding on Zaya, Lester crossed the Urus Mountains and returned to the Emerald Territory as early as July. Lester had enough confidence in the abilities of Margaret and Alice. He knew that he did not need to intervene in the battle to capture Hedi City, so he returned to the Emerald Territory in advance. First, he needed to calm people's hearts as soon as possible and understand the various development achievements of the Emerald Territory in recent years. Second, he wanted to prepare war supplies. Margaret did not consider personally attacking the Hedi people when she sent troops, so the logistical supplies were not enough to support the war plan formulated by Lester. It was difficult even for the rich Emerald Territory to prepare supplies for 40,000 people for 4 months in 3 months. It almost emptied half of the grain reserve warehouses in the Emerald Territory. If the part consumed on the road was counted, the logistical supplies needed would be even more. The long supply line seriously affected the war capabilities of the Emerald Territory. If it were not for the Black Iron River that took on most of the transportation pressure, I'm afraid that even the Emerald Territory could not afford it. Especially in the cold climate of the North Sea, it is not only necessary to have bread and dried meat to fill one's stomach, but also cotton padded clothes and cotton shoes are also essential military supplies. The environment north of the Pagros Triple Peak is completely different from that in the south, and frostbite is enough to make soldiers lose all their combat effectiveness. Without considering weapons and armor, just transporting food and clothing is a very difficult task. September 25th. Emerald Territory, Fidlit, Lod's Mansion. Lester, wearing a loose black satin robe, was sitting in a chair and looking through the development report of Emerald Territory in recent years. Miss Hab and Hina, who were tall and wearing white and purple cotton pajamas, were pounding their legs and kneading their shoulders. Jis, who replaced Lester as the Lord of Emerald Territory for 5 years, stood aside and supplemented information at any time. Putting down the burden in her heart, the woman has come out of her loss. After changing her mind, Jis was extremely happy that her man could always maintain his handsome appearance. In her opinion, no matter whether a man will grow old or not, as long as he still loves her, it is enough. In fact, even if her face has a lot of ugly wrinkles, the man will still be intimate with her without any gaps. This guy Crystal, master blacksmith of the war workshop, actually worked with Zahra, Flower Rat, to create a magic crystal power device and applied it to windmills, water wheels and transportation. Recalling the scene when he just returned to the Emerald Territory, the white-bearded old man knelt in front of him with his bare chest and begged for forgiveness. Lester was also a little amused. Chapter 383. Going up the stairs is not straight, going down the stairs is crooked. Lester was angry at first because the old blacksmith changed his order without authorization and cast his own face instead of the mask on the gold coin mold, but after learning the reason, the man calmed down. In fact, the idea of replacing the mask with a human portrait was not only held by Crystal. Before the gold coin template was completely determined, the top leaders of the Emerald Territory held a statement meeting. Except for Margaret, Alice was still fighting in the Damoplean. Everyone else, including the Angel Sisters, opposed the decision to cast a mask on the gold coin. They felt that this was a blasphemy against honor and authority. It was the Lord of the Emerald Territory who was worthy of respect, not the Lord's mask. In other words, except for Margaret, everyone had rebelled against him, including his 2 intimate little wings. In this way, Lester could no longer vent his anger and punish anyone, especially when the 2 little angels were serving him. Brother Lester, is that big sister really the beautiful dragon bird from before? She looks very sad. Hina, who was pinching his shoulders, cast her eyes on the tall woman standing at the window. Her gradient black hair was softly draped around her waist. The woman was staring at the blue sky and white clouds in the distance, and seemed a little sad. Until now, Hina still couldn't connect the dragon bird with a woman. Of course she is Zaya. By the way, your names are really similar. Hearing this, Hina stopped what she was doing, leaned forward, and leaned into Lester's ear with a mischievous smile. Every time she was next to a man, she always wanted to act like a spoiled child involuntarily, and the growth she had made in recent years was instantly destroyed. I didn't expect that the big dragon bird that took Brother Lester away would turn into a beautiful big sister. Brother Lester, is Sister Zaya's thing the same as ours? Almost. Feeling the heavy pressure coming from the top of his head, Lester, who endured the humiliation, sighed secretly. Unknowingly, the little girl has grown into a big girl, and the little angel is no longer little. Thinking back to the past, I could hug a little girl with one arm, but now I can't do it. Maybe this is the trouble that belongs to men. Before Lester could say anything, the blonde who had been pounding the man's thigh expressionlessly pressed her middle finger under her thumb, accumulated strength, and popped out, hitting the black-haired girl's eyebrows, causing the girl to let out an "Oh. This man is hopeless, Hina, so you are the same." Me too, as expected of Hina. Me too. Covering her forehead, Hina made a face and high-fived Lester, who agreed with her, making Miss Ha speechlessly hold her forehead. Apart from her father and mother, the two people she loves most in her life are actually such immature guys. She has to bear it. Fortunately, the dragon bird that the man brought back still has a sense of maturity and stability, and seems very reliable. Miss Ha breathed a sigh of relief, focusing her eyes on the somewhat sentimental back facing away from her. Although she didn't have much contact, she could feel that it was not easy for the dragon bird girl to turn into a human. Just as this thought came to her mind, the dragon bird girl turned around after hearing the playful sounds behind her, and her beautiful vertical pupils were filled with unfathomable wisdom. Leched. Zaya wants one too. What does it feel like to be pounced on by a woman who is more than 2 meters tall, has a hot body, and has hard scales on her vital parts? Bang. Miss Ha, who rolled over twice on the expensive blanket and hit her head against the wall, finally understood what it meant to see stars. Even a divine body can't stand such a fuck. Holding Zaya, Lester and Sinner also fell to the ground and rolled together, holding the dizzy Miss Ha in their arms. The four of them clung to each other, but their clothes became less and less due to the unknown force. Seeing some cavities different from those of humans, Sinner screamed. The ceiling kept making a squeaking sound, followed by a cat-like panting sound, which soon turned into a love quartet. Downstairs, Jess, who was entertaining her sister, filled a glass of Voltiki blood rose for her sister Terry. In front of her sister's flushed cheeks, the younger sister drank the expensive red wine in the crystal goblet in one gulp, which was enough for ordinary dignitaries in Naxos to show off for a year, and spoke expressionlessly. With young women, they will naturally forget about us old women. Sister, you are fine. You rely on the power of magic to maintain your beauty in your 20s. I'm old and ugly, and I can't stand his torment. Take my share. I will cheer you downstairs. Anyway, I have experienced this kind of thing a lot, and I don't feel anything after a lot. Let's drink. Jits, what are you talking about? Tally, who studied natural elemental magic with Tarina in the Black Rose Mage Academy, and became a formal mage of the Curse and Natural departments, did not seem to have changed much. She was very mature in other things, but when she experienced things related to Lester, she became a little immature and cramped, as if she had returned to the youthful time when she just entered the academy and was harassed. Taking a deep breath, Tally seemed to have found a little courage and finally calmed down. She felt the loss in her sister's heart, so she was ready to cheer her sister up. After making the decision, the elder sister drank the contents of the cup in one gulp, and stood up, and held her younger sister's shoulders in front of her younger sister's somewhat surprised eyes. Her sharp eyes made her younger sister feel a little more uneasy. She knew that her elder sister only looked soft and sticky, but once she got serious, she was more terrifying than anyone else, which was completely opposite to her tough appearance and soft heart. He is very busy now, we should not disturb him. Teacher Tarina said that there are two things in this world that cannot be interrupted. The first is to do magic experiments, and the second is to do human experiments. The former can make mages continue to improve, and the latter can make humans forget their troubles. GC's mouth grinned, and she already had a bad premonition in her heart. What? Human experiments? It's to test how many movements the human body can make, and how much pleasure it can withstand. Don't worry, it won't hurt. This is how Teacher Tarina and I got through when Lord Lester was away. Relax and leave everything to me. After struggling for a while, GC still nodded obediently and lay down on the sofa half-heartedly. It's not that she hadn't heard of some special connection between the same-sex, but she had never thought that such a thing would happen to her. Upstairs, Lester suddenly stopped, a magical light flashed, and a pair of wolf ears grew out. He stuck to the floor and listened for a while. His expression gradually became complicated. Why? Stopped. Miss Ha opened her blurry eyes, and the man in front of her looked very strange. So, this is the contradictory feeling of being unwilling and excited at the same time. Wolf, I understand you a little bit. Thank you all readers for your support. I wish you all a happy Children's Day. Fog. I was criticized by my leader. In fact, I have been considering whether to continue working or take a break for a while. It is really too tiring to do two things at the same time, traveling and writing. After thinking about it, I still can't do things like writing nonsense to fool readers and earn full attendance. I know that many readers have invested their feelings in this book. In my opinion, this feeling and expectation of me have exceeded the meaning of money. This is the most proud and cherished thing as a writer. So even if it is badly written, I still can't give up writing. I have to stick to it even at the minimum. Let me talk about the extra chapters in June. The monthly ticket in May is 500 plus. According to the extra chapter rules, I owe 2 chapters. Based on the previous standard of 4,000 words per chapter, I need to update 8,000 more words in June, which is 4 chapters. I currently owe 4 chapters. Because there are many things to do, the monthly ticket bonus rule for June is temporarily invalid. Only the leader bonus rule is retained. A new leader adds 3 bonuses. We will see how things go in July. Maybe the bonus rule will be changed. If no one votes without bonuses, it would be too pitiful. After all, few authors will add bonuses based on the number of monthly tickets like me. Chapter 384 The Bells of the Pale Bell Tower. Emerald Territory, West District of Fightlet Inner City, Pale Clock Tower. The 98-meter building height makes the Dark Ages, Victorian style, clock tower the most dazzling pearl in Fightlet. The fence-like jade square columns composed of white marble ripple with intoxicating colorful luster in the sparkling water of the Moon River. The 7-meter diameter crimson magic steel alloy dial is evenly distributed with finely forged black steel produced by the Immortal Fortress. The black steel scale is inlaid with 365 colorful cat's eyes. The sword-shaped watch hands are made of bright silver Dalmatia steel. If you look closely, you will find that the second hand and minute hand are enlarged versions of the Star Rune Blade and Fire Rune Blade. When the second hand and minute hand overlap, they will become the combined shape of the Hour Hand. The Starfire Rune Blade is the magic sword used by the Angel Sisters. There are 4 such luxurious and noble clock dials, connected to the magic crystal power device with exquisite gears and levers. The hands are driven to rotate according to the magic energy pulse in the crystal stone. Every beat will make a precise and heavy click sound, like a never-ending clock song. In the evening, a slightly hunched figure appeared on the edge of the unprotected building outside the bell room on the Pale Bell Tower that was not open to the public. The refreshing wind blew the fluttering corners of his clothes with a thrilling amplitude. The handsome man did not care whether he would jump down in the strong wind and become a fallen crimson that embellished the holiness. The metal door of the bell room was pushed open, and the high-top bayonet combat boots stepped on the tiles, making heavy and regular footsteps. The man was wearing a set of customized top-level assassination equipment. Although his face was not clean, it was full of characteristics. The short and hard stubble and the sinister and vicious eyes like a venomous snake made the man full of deadly threats from beginning to end. If you add the intermittent creepy smile that never stopped, it would be enough to make the most ruthless hunter in the dark hold his tail and run for his life. Hector, one of the 4 elders of the Night's Edge, has countless souls under his command. Even the most vicious and ruthless killer of the Night's Edge will shudder unconsciously after hearing the name Hector. Unlike others, Hector hates such garbage nicknames as Bloodhand Butcher or Skinning Demon. He only has one name, which is his real name. Thanks to his dog sister, Hector has a dog bastard nephew who can't be killed. Hector walked a few steps to the young man's side. He took out a golden box from his dark red cloak, pushed open the lid, and took out a purified brown chewing stick from the box, and held it directly in his mouth. The chewing stick was rich in purified paralytic toxin Yuzube, and the dosage was enough to make an adult man die suddenly on the spot. However, the man tasted the pleasure brought by the poison without any care. He even imagined that he would lose his balance because of the chewing stick and jump off the clock tower to end his life. The pleasure of lingering on the edge of death is the same as skinning. Supreme pleasure. No matter how many times you look down from the pale clock tower, Fidelit is a very beautiful and orderly city. The dense underground sewers and grids bury the filth deeply, and it is washed away by undercurrents in places that people cannot see. That's right, I'm talking about waste garbage like you who should have died long ago. So, uncle, should I die like this? Hector nodded without hesitation to his nephew's answer, with his usual sneer. Just don't die near the clock tower designed by the master. If you leave the clock tower, you can die anywhere you want. Oh, then I'd better not die first. Hector stopped talking, just chewing the paralytic poison, silently looking at the sunset in the distance, and no one knew what he was thinking. Every time he sat on the edge of the clock tower, Sako could clearly feel his life slipping away. The click sound of the second hand made his body feel alive, not just a walking shell. A dark cloud floated in from afar, blocking the few remaining rays of sunlight, plunging the world into darkness and making Sako a little more comfortable. Although he was no longer afraid of the sun, he still preferred to hide in a small and dark place, which made him feel more secure. Uncle, if you have to fart, fart quickly. If you want to die, die quickly. I don't remember teaching you to hesitate, like a waste. Can I take another look at her? Her name, his mother, what was her name? Sako was a little confused. I don't know when. My mother's face became a little blurry, and only a fragmented smile and a warm heart were left in my memory, just like the fragments of a mirror that are hard to piece together. I kept reminding myself not to forget, but I still forgot a lot of things. To the point that it was hard to say the simple word mother, as if saying mother would make me become immature again, back to that dark dungeon, bound by chains. Or maybe, not saying the word mother was because of another feeling. Sako knew that he didn't want to, but he was willing, because she was the only woman he cared about and missed in his life. This tangle is like being bitten by a beloved poisonous snake. You want to chop off the snake's head with a knife, but you can't bear it. Instead, you relax your muscles and let the snake bite deeper for love. Disgusting little devil, you are exactly the same as your bastard father. As if he had noticed the man's contradictory thoughts and emotions, Hector narrowed his eyes, spit out a mouthful of thick phlegm, but then he thought that this was the sacred place designed by the master for the Night's Edge, and swallowed the thick phlegm again. This back and forth made Hector lose the idea of continuing to taste Yuzube. He bit off the half-chewed chewing stick and put it back into the gold box, and then Hector swallowed the content in his mouth. Sako was not surprised by Hector's answer. It was just that it was not beyond his expectations, but it did not mean that he was not disappointed. In fact, he was disappointed every time. He expected no hope, but he still had an obsession and sadness that he could not let go. Bastard, the master wants to see you. If nothing goes wrong, I'm afraid your magic journey is about to begin. Come early tomorrow and make yourself look like a human being. Sako's eyes brightened a little. In addition to the woman who nurtured him and his uncle, there was another crucial person who completely influenced his life. This person also gave him love, warmth, and changed his life trajectory towards death. This role can never be replaced by others. Lester, his master. Only behind his master, he will forget all fears, abandon all obsessions, and find a touch of peace and tranquility in the abyss. If your performance satisfies the master, I can consider letting you meet her. Dong dong dong, the hour hand pointed to the position of 6, and the grand and heavy bell rang, indicating that the work of the day has been completed, and the remaining time should be enjoyed in peace, sacred and inviolable by no one. This is time that belongs only to him. Hector's figure has disappeared. Sarko covered his chest and watched the last setting sun set in the west. Only he knew how fast his heart beat when the bell rang. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 385, Night's Edge Pledge of Allegiance. The underground space under the Pale Bell Tower carries the cold and simple style of the Night's Edge. The cold toned bricks and the dark passages make the secret base under the bell tower look more like a large dungeon. The secret passages connect several key areas of the outer city, and even ordinary members of the Night's Edge are not qualified to know. According to Morris, if the killers cannot adapt to the loneliest and darkest environment, the sharpest dagger will be easily broken. Night is the best protective color, and this is what Lester taught him. Walking in the underground building that incorporates his own design concept, Lester feels a little strange. It's a bit second year meaning. Surrounded by a group of dangerous guys with cold and cruel temperaments, Lester feels like an underground king who controls the grey world. In his opinion, this kind of role positioning is actually no different from the Rat King in the Ditch. It looks majestic to ordinary people. In America, the real king is always the wealthy tycoon who has his own legal private armed forces, vast estates, and can influence the situation in the parliament. He sells missiles and tanks all over the world, and he is never a gangster boss who dares not even see the light. Compared with the latter, the former underground king is like a baby who holds a sand shovel to build a sand castle on the beach. A hurricane will blow over, and the person in the shovel will disappear directly from the world. This time, I came to the base of the Pale Bell Tower to meet the grown-up Sarko and test Sarko's ability as a killer with a special mission, and also to accept the oath of allegiance from the latest generation of Night's Edge members. Since Lester left the Emerald Territory for Ionia, the new generation of Night's Edge members have never been able to become core members because they could not hold the allegiance ceremony, and their number has increased. After all, Morris knew that the Demon Face Lord was pretended by GC during this period, so he naturally would not let Lester's killers be loyal to a fake master. Starting from the most outstanding first generation of Night's Edge, the Night's Edge under Morris' full control has developed to the fourth generation. Except for the first generation, selected by Lester himself, because it is too harsh, the core members of each generation of Night's Edge will not exceed 10 people. In Night's Edge, the number of people is never limited by rules, but by suitable talents. In other words, each core member of Night's Edge is a tough character selected from thousands of times. Not only do they need to examine their personal background and personal ability, but they must also be alone before joining. Each one of them is a guy who can go to a certain orphanage to be the protagonist. Master, Demacia's envoys have been very active recently, and have secret contacts with the Kingdom of Northland and the Principality of Valoran. The specific reasons for the contact are still unknown. They have done this very secretly, and it is difficult for our people to get accurate information without alerting them. Lester observed Morris, who was half a body behind him, calmly. Morris, who had a deliberately grown beard, wore loose black clothes and cloth boots, and looked like a harmless middle-aged man in his 40s. Although he already had his own family, Morris still focused his life on the management and operation of Night's Edge. The man who rarely went into battle personally did not stop practicing and training, and his body contained more terrifying power than before. A loyal and reliable man. This was Lester's evaluation of Morris, and then he thought of Hector's situation. Logically speaking, Hector, who took large doses of paralytic hallucinogenic toxins all day, should have been buried in the grave due to organ failure, but now he is still alive, and kicking and fighting wits and courage with his nephew, which can explain a lot of problems. Although there is no convincing evidence yet, high purity magic steel equipment seems to have a benign effect on the human body after a long period of killing. People who enter the boiling blood state and escape by themselves will have more obvious physical improvement, and physical injuries seem to have the possibility of healing. The side effects are still unknown, but overall, it is a good thing for killers who are often in life and death. Perhaps the mountain copper produced by the souls absorbed by the red rune also has the function of absorbing souls to strengthen the user? If so, how high does the purity of the mountain copper need to be? Is the strengthening efficiency of the sword higher or the strengthening efficiency of the armor higher? To what extent can killing an adult strengthen it? Lester kept this conjecture in mind and prepared to let Crystal verify it. It happened that a group of northern mountain barbarians who were unwilling to participate in the gladiatorial contest were imprisoned in the dungeon. Demacia would rather trade the Demacia steel they regard as a treasure to us than give us the high purity forbidden magic stone, and the high purity forbidden magic stone appeared in the mercenary guild of the Kingdom of Gran for slave hunting. I think this can already explain a lot of problems. When our neighbors to the west were fighting in Naxos, they were not idle. Sometimes they can do a lot of things without taking action themselves. Lester sneered. A weak Naxos is a good Naxos for Demacia. Naxos's desire for expansion and aggressiveness are too strong, which has long caused dissatisfaction among neighboring countries. Although the Principality of Valoran usually calls itself a vassal state, if there is a chance, the Principality of Valoran will definitely not mind giving the immortal Bastion a blow. The opportunity to beat a drowning dog is rare. By then, it will not only be the Principality of Valoran, but also the Kingdom of Northland, and the Kingdom of Gran will probably have a piece of the pie. Morris naturally understood this. So, the master used the hawkish representative of the Principality of Valoran, Violet, as a test target, and let Sarko eliminate the representative of the young faction, to warn the Principality of Valoran not to have second thoughts. Yes, I think the weight of a great noble family head is enough to make the sheep of the Principality of Valoran understand the truth. Sheep with horns are still sheep. Don't try to provoke tiger whiskers, because that is a price they can't afford. When they came to the hall, 15 5th generation Nightblade assassins were wearing simple plain clothes and ready for battle. Many of them had obvious fatigue on their faces, obviously just rushing back from other places. Sarko stood in the corner with his uncle. When they saw Lester, they knelt down and saluted at the same time. "Master, get up." Yes. It was not until Lester spoke that the uncle and nephew stood up. Sarko secretly glanced at his uncle with his peripheral vision. Sure enough, his uncle had a serious face and no smile on his face. Without saying anything, Lester just sat on the high seat in silence, memorizing the faces of the 15 Nightblade members with a serious look. In fact, he remembered the name and face of every core killer of the Nightblade. Although Lester handed the affairs to Morris to manage, he was not without vigilance. At least if Morris wanted to betray, he had enough means to let the killers personally send their beloved teacher off for the last time. Of course, this kind of insurance method did not exist when Morris was still loyal. It was a manifestation of complete trust. The effectiveness of personal worship when used properly cannot be measured by thought. Now, offer absolute loyalty to your supreme master, Lord Lester. In Morris's solemn voice, the 15 people knelt on one knee, lowered their heads, and held up their hands. Swear allegiance to Lord Lester until death. Stepping down from the throne, Lester took out a dark red sword-shaped metal nameplate like blood jade from Morris's hand. Lester placed the unique magic steel identity plate in everyone's hand, along with words of encouragement. From this moment on, their fate will change dramatically. I just finished coding, and there is really no stock left cac. I still owe 4 chapters to add more. Chapter 386 Love at All Costs. In the Principality of Valoran, the territory of the Leona family, in a mansion in the western main city of Granlet. Gently putting down the hardcover edition of Glory of Valoran which recorded the century-old history of the Kingdom of Valoran, the man stood up and pushed open the glass door. Once upon a time, Valoran was also a great country. The various lords of Valoran owned the entire eastern region, from the Nokmoch Plain in the west to the Sea of Watchers in the east, the port of Zorn in Shurima in the south, and the Dalmor Plain in the north. All Valorans were proud of their powerful country until a barbarian from the north, a barbarian named Son Yuzal, came all the way south with a bloodthirsty army, opening the prelude to the division of the Kingdom of Valoran. That was the darkest era. The kingdom army was defeated again and again, and was humiliated and killed by a group of barbarians. The dead were made into human pigs, and impaled on spiked wooden stakes, while the living took up simple weapons under slavery, and launched a crazy attack on the country that raised them. The kingdom army was getting fewer and fewer, and the barbarians of San Yuzal were getting more and more. The land of Valoran was covered with grey. A fortress that buried countless corpses appeared in the east of the continent. At this moment, another group of brutal barbarians defeated the tyrant, but inherited the tyrant's will, bringing disaster to the Valoran continent again. Can I really stop all this? Standing outside the open-air balcony surrounded by curved marble fences, Violet, wearing a light green cloak, squinted and looked into the distance. The 12-meter-high wall was full of knife marks and arrow holes of the years. The battlements had been repaired for 100 years, but it was difficult to restore the previous edges and corners. Instead, some flashy things were added. The breath of decay has been lingering in this magnificent city for 500 years. Since the kingdom was torn apart by the warlords and tyrants in the north, the nobles of the kingdom of Valoran have never sat at the same table to do the same thing. The kingdom has become a principality. It is impossible for the nobles to be closely connected by words and ideas alone. Unlike the emerging city of Moslian in the east, Granlott is like an old coward in his twilight years, who is afraid of death, but wears silk and satin clothes and gold and silver. He arrogantly recalls his past glory all day long, but always kowtows to foreign robbers and exchanges the most precious things in his home for false peace, not knowing that he is just meat on the chopping board. When the butcher has time, the butcher's knife will fall on him. Just like the murderous butcher 500 years ago, the neighbors in the northeast of the principality are also a group of brutal villains who are keen on destruction. There is no doubt that the kneecaps of the Leona family have rotted along with their heads. Rotten things must be cut out with a ruthless heart. Knock, knock, knock. The door was pushed open in response. The moment Violet turned her head, the solemn look in her eyes disappeared, and her facial lines showed a few more gentleness, restoring her gentle and elegant temperament. The meaning of knocking on the door is not only to create distance, but also to hide all worries, and prepare the most perfect and reliable face for the one you love. Lena, didn't you go to have afternoon tea with Sylvia and the others today? In response to her father's question, the beautiful girl who was isolated by other peers shook her head and did not tell the real reason. That made her father worried. I was not feeling well, so I rejected Sylvia's invitation. Father, did things go well this time? The man paused and said in a relaxed tone, my daughter, you know, if we want to deal with a group of stubborn and old fools at the conference table, we need more than just a little patience. Putchy father, in your eyes, are the Honorable Duke Anthony and his men just fools? Seeing her daughter, who was not very happy because she was isolated by other noble girls, laughing, Violet felt a little proud in her heart, but her face became more solemn. No, they may be even more stupid than Rodir. After all, the fool Rodir still know how to move their mouths to eat. I feed the food to Duke Anthony's mouth and he doesn't even know to chew. It's probably because all his teeth have fallen out. Hahaha, comparing Duke Anthony with Rodir is too rude to the Rodir. No, 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 my daughter, you are wrong. I'm actually insulting the Rodir. I think I should apologize to Mr. Rodir. The father and daughter who slandered the nobleman laughed happily at the same time. Listening to the warm conversation in the room, Sarko, hiding in the closet, shrank his body and held his breath silently, holding the magic steel dagger in his hand tightly. His nose was filled with the smell of the girl, and Sarko couldn't help but feel a little irritated. Perhaps he had never experienced the things in the smile, and Sarko didn't understand what the throbbing in his heart was, but he knew that, if it wasn't in order, he didn't want to kill the man named Violet. However, this was a task assigned to him by the master. Even if he was unwilling, he had to complete it at all costs according to the master's standards. In this mission, he must show the necessary deterrence. This is the only thing he has to pay attention to, which is related to the master's satisfaction with himself. In addition, whether his behavior will cause pain to a girl who lost her father is no longer something he can consider. He has long lost the qualifications to cherish tenderness. Now he just wants to live and see that woman again. It was getting late. Lena came to the study with a hot cup of black tea and knocked on the door. Come in. The girl came to the desk. On the desk was a map that her father cherished the most. The map was marked with the names of various fortresses, including the military deployment of the Leona family in Naxos discovered by the family spies. The girl knew that, unlike the cowardly Leona family, the family led by her father had been preparing for a war with Naxos. The tea you brew is very similar to the one your mother brews. It's just an ordinary action, but it always brews a sweet taste that I like the most." The man's eyes swept over his daughter, raised his eyebrows, and the man looked away and put his eyes on the map again. That was the barbarian country called Naxos. With the desperate madness and the legacy of the tyrant, they established themselves in the fortresses forged by the dead souls with the behavior of bandits, and they were eyeing the surrounding countries. Fighting a war is like tasting tea. You can never be impatient. Impatientness is a blasphemy and waste of victory and love. But I didn't put sugar in the tea. The girl's smile was as pure as a lily, and Violet finally couldn't focus on the map anymore. Sweet tea without sugar is really good tea. Dad, Mom must be very happy to have a husband like you. Lena, if you can't love someone with all your heart, then this love is meaningless. Holding the dagger, Sako knew that he had already made a choice on how to deal with the two. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Chapter 387 The Worrying Subordinates. Emerald Territory, Lord Fidelet's residence. Lester, who had just finished inspecting the underground fortress of the Shine Silver Mountains, had just sat on the chair and made himself a cup of tea when Morris knocked on the door. This forced him to do one more step. "Master, Sako's work is done. Sit down and talk slowly. There's no need to be so restrained here. Come and taste the ancient tree black tea processed by the specialty frying process in the quiet forest. For me, this taste always reminds me of the past." Morris nodded and sat on the sofa, took the tea Lester made for him, and took a sip. The bitterness lingered in the mouth like a memory of the past, making people want to taste it for a while longer. Sometimes people can learn a lot from pain, as long as they are willing to endure the pain and uncover their bloody scars. This is the pain of growth, which is inevitable. It's really good tea. Lester nodded in agreement and spoke. "I'll bring you half a pound of tea when you leave, Morris. Don't be too busy sometimes. Leave some time for your family so that you can relax a little. Although you call me master, I don't want you to really treat me as a slave. I only want your absolute loyalty, but I have never deprived you of your dignity as a man." Knowing that Lester, who had just returned from the Shine Silver Mountains, wanted to take a rest, Morris calmly drank tea and chatted about some simple topics. After half a cup of tea, the two began to talk about business. This incident caused a great uproar in the Principality of Valoran. The patriarch of the Ryan family not only had an affair with his daughter, but also died suddenly due to physical problems during the adultery. His daughter had a mental breakdown and became a lunatic who lost her mind. This scandal has made the Ryan family a laughingstock in the noble circle of the Principality of Valoran. Sako even wrote down the military map drawn by the Ryan family, which marked some military fortresses of the Principality of Valoran and Naxos. If we want to go to war with the Principality of Valoran, I think we should be able to use it. Lester never doubted Sako's ability, but Sako's ability to do so was beyond Lester's expectations. An ambitious falcon just had its wings broken. Ridiculous. Lester drank the black tea in the cup. The deformed little boy who was hunched over, walked with bow legs, was afraid of light, and was nearsighted eventually grew into an excellent assassin under his training. It is still unknown whether it is the devil clown in the game, but Sako can stand on his own at this time. It's ridiculous. In this way, the Ryan family, which has lost its reputation, will not be able to continue to coerce other nobles to rebel against Naxos. Under the leadership of Duke Anthony of the Leona family, at least in the short term, the Principality of Valoran will not continue to pose a threat to Naxos. Although the Valorans can't see any clues, some smart people speculate whether there is any conspiracy for Violet, who is secretly leading the rebellion against Naxos, to die in Grandlet. Conspiracy? They can't do anything without evidence. The fact that Sako can do things so perfectly shows that he has indeed grown up. It's time for him to go to the Black Rose Academy to develop his magic talent. I'm looking forward to what an assassin who has mastered magic can do. After talking about Sako, the two did not mean to stop talking. After refilling a cup of black tea, Lester changed the topic and asked about Demacia again. He still cares about Fiddlesticks, the original demon who symbolizes fear. He still remembers the name of the Nightblade assassin who died at Fiddlestick's hands. Warren and Blackfeather are the core assassins of the Nightblade who are responsible for exploring important intelligence in Demacia. What happened to Fosbero's demon? After a little thought, Morris sorted out the information about Fosbero in his mind. After Warren and Blackfeather disappeared, according to your orders, all the exploration activities of the Night's Edge bypassed the scope of Fosbero. Therefore, the information we obtained was just hearsay and has not been confirmed. It is said that after that incident, Fosbero became panic-stricken due to rumors of hauntings. As more people disappeared inexplicably, many Dematians moved out of Fosbero directly. When the matter could no longer be ignored, Dematia's elite army, the Steel Swordsman Corps and the Forbidden Demon Guards, entered Fosbero at the same time to conduct a thorough investigation. The final official investigation result was that evil wizards conducted terrible human experiments in Fosbero. The army took away the remaining residents living in Fosbero and settled them together, but no one knows where. Demacia seemed to deliberately block the information about Fosbero. After that, there were no more rumors about hauntings and demons in Demacia. Most Dematians believed that the Fosbero incident was the work of wizards. Lester smiled coldly. There are smart people in Demacia who know how to deal with the fear demons. If the fear cannot be curbed, the only thing to do is to cut off the source of the fear. Compared with directly confronting the demons, it is more convenient to kill some unarmed civilians who are bewitched by the mages. I'm afraid those residents living in Fosbero have been buried in the ground. Morris nodded without comment at Lester's guess. He didn't know how Demacia dealt with the transferred civilians. He just vaguely realized that his master seemed to have an inexplicable prejudice against Demacia. Later, Demacia experienced another disarmament. Kraken, the commander of the Steel Swordsman Legion, became the deputy of Demacia's General Oren, and the deputy commander Neltis became the commander of the Steel Swordsman Legion. By the way, I haven't seen Northless for a long time. What about the love portrait left by Northless? I remember her name was Nelvia. She also helped Meredith a lot. Did she come here? Well, how should I put it? It's a little complicated. Morris scratched his head, looking a little embarrassed. This attitude aroused Lester's curiosity. He always paid a lot of attention to Northless who loved him. Of course, it was not because Northless had any improper thoughts about him, but because the first generation of Nightblade Killer was selected by him personally. In fact, in addition to Northless, he was also secretly paying attention to the life trajectories of Deadest and Demaster. The taciturn Deadest and the female soldier of the Black Iron Guard, Vida, have already had a child. Demast, who does not plan to have children, has found a foreign prostitute to be his patron. He has taken great care of the prostitute's business and has secretly protected the prostitute several times. The two are obviously close yet distant, but they value each other more than anyone else. Seriously speaking, Hector is the only one who has not started a family among the five. The ravages of fate have prevented Hector from getting out of the shadow of the past, perhaps because of his crazy sister and Sacco. This knot is too heavy, and Lester doesn't know how to untie it. Morris said embarrassedly that, Northless, he seems to have been abducted by Nelvia. Chapter 388 The Kidnapped Assassin. After Morris's explanation, Lester finally understood the whole story and realized that his most loyal subordinate did not betray him and the Emerald Territory, but was sleeping on straw and tasting gall, being in Chaos Camp, but his heart was with Han and was trying to make compromises every day. It is indeed a bit complicated, and even a bit bloody. After Northless was taken advantage of by Nelvia and blackmailed, Northless went all out and directly created a boy. It doesn't matter if this child is a boy, what matters is that the little guy calls his mother dad and his father mom, and he also performs a farce every day, saying where is his mother? Because she was too angry, Nelvia strangled two noble rapists who were supposed to be tried and holding swords. Faced with the accountability of other nobles, even Lion could not continue to cover up for her, so he could only let Nelvia join the Forbidden Magic Guard to atone for her sins by guarding the dungeon. The victims could only accept the decent concessions of the military nobles and warn the dandies and the family to be sensible and upright, so as not to be killed by a beast a few years younger than themselves and have no place to cry. For a time, the dirty deeds among the nobles of Demacia actually decreased a lot. Nelvia, who was squatting in the dungeon, also realized that her behavior brought pressure to the family and changed some of her ways of doing things, using more tactful means to implement the principles of life. However, she saw too many dirty things in the dungeon and understood how cruel humans could be to their own kind, and Nelvia was also a little discouraged. Until the Meredith incident, Nelvia met Northless, who broke into the prison. She did something that she had wanted to do for a long time, but could not find a suitable target. The girl coerced the handsome and beautiful Noddles to be a man who was still not satisfied. It was fun, but after wiping her butt and pulling up her pants, the price was really high. Afterwards, in order to clean up the butt of Noddles, who killed many of the forbidden magic guards, she could not use the light to deceive, so Nelvia directly took the blame on herself. The mistake of letting the intruder go made the credit for the perfect handling of the serious diplomatic incident fly to the heads of the victim nobles, plugging their mouths full of benevolence and morality. The well-fed nobles generously stopped pursuing Nelvia's guilt, and Nelvia also accepted the decision of being eliminated by the forbidden magic guards as a punishment, just in time to leave the disgusting dungeon and go home to raise children. No matter how much a noble commits a crime, this is the ending. Everything was going well, but then the problem came. Seeing Nelvia's belly start to bulge abnormally, after ruling out the possibility that her daughter, who likes to lift weights, has gained weight, or has eaten 20 large watermelons, the chins of the Ryans began to fall freely, out of control of their bodies. Their daughter, who is more manly than a man, has quietly developed a big belly, and she is so proud, just like a bad man who plays with a woman. Who is the father of the child? When did it happen? Who is blind? Ahem. Harming their good daughter. Pregnancy before marriage is a huge scandal, and in Demacia it is a synonym for infidelity and debauchery. It is okay to hide it secretly without being discovered, or to find a scapegoat before it is exposed. If it is discovered, and no scapegoat can be found, it will be severely spurned and criticized by other nobles, and the person involved will be directly exiled from Demacia. This will make the Laurent family a laughingstock in Demacia. The price was too heavy, and Nelvia, who had always been fearless, was a little panicked. Facing her parents, who had chosen to tolerate her since she was a child, Nelvia told the truth, but concealed the fact that the invader was an oxen. She just said that she fell in love with the man at first sight, and she was so in love that she had to pull it out with all her strength. Even if she was a bit nervous, Nelvia knew that her parents would not agree to her marrying a member of a secret organization in Naxos. After all, at the Silver Conference, Ryan Laurent was born to instigate a fight between Demacia and Naxos. If his father Ryan knew that his child was the child of a member of the core killer organization of Naxos, he would probably be so angry that he would die on the spot. In the end, the Ryan couple also agreed to the hungry, military, and strategic young man. After all, except for her sturdy figure, her daughter was not inferior to other noble girls in other aspects, and even had an advantage in security. She could beat 3 strong men with one hand. Then Nelvia contacted her girlfriend, Noddles, through the Nightblade Assassin's base in Jandal. After explaining the situation, after careful thinking, Noddles, who had been waiting for her lover for a long time, was disheartened. She sacrificed herself for the master and man she loved, and finally agreed to the request of marrying into the family. She successfully broke into the family of Laurent, a military noble of Demacia, as the first generation of Nightblade assassin, and became the dazzling Nightblade Venus. Finally, Lester, whose nerves were throbbing, and his heart was in a mess, and who didn't know if he was bullied, confirmed what he had just heard with one sentence. In other words, Noddles is now marrying into the family of his girlfriend, who knows Noddles' true identity as a wife. Is she still thinking about me? Morris sighed and gently touched his forehead. Yes, master, your expression is exactly the same as when I first learned this information. Chapter 389. Being a bad guy also requires talent. After batches of logistical supplies sealed in wooden crates were loaded onto special transport carriages, Sarko, wearing a black hood, stood on the edge of the roof of the residential building and watched the last few carriages leave. Sarko knew that this meant that the master had left, and so did Sister Misha, and he would follow Mage Tally to the Immortal Fortress in 3 days to learn mysterious magic from the mages of the Black Rose. Sako had long known that he had a talent for magic, whether it was his master, user, or other Black Rose mages who served the Emerald Territory. The reason why he had only done some simple mana reserve training and meditation instead of learning specific magic spells was because special magic talents would be affected by acquired learning. If you want to maximize the efficiency of using your talents, you must take the right path from the beginning. In fact, for Sako himself, whether it was magic or killing training, it didn't matter what he did. He only needed to consider whether his goals and actions were in accordance with the orders and wishes of his master, and he didn't need to consider anything else. Except for his uncle and that woman. He had his own ideas and desires. Summer in Emerald Territory is always accompanied by sentimental drizzle. The hazy grey sky and the dampness that enveloped his body made Sako's mind somewhat divergent. He enjoyed the quietness and the rain at this moment. The hustle and bustle of the world and the painful struggles of human beings disappeared one after another. Sako held up his hands, palms facing up. The raindrops gently hit the lines on the palms, bringing a cold feeling. This feeling is a little warmer than the human body that has lost its breath. Through the drizzle, he clearly saw how the girl named Lena was heartbroken, watching her father and lover gradually become cold. He was alone in the rain, savoring the overly complicated emotions of the girl before she went crazy, until the heavy sound of leather boots stepping on the rain came from behind. His uncle's voice was still full of disgust and hatred for himself. Sako had long been accustomed to being hated, but he was surprised that his uncle did not call him a bastard this time. How did you do it? I don't quite understand. Hector frowned and swallowed the Yuzube chewing stick in his mouth in 2 or 3 bites. The rain began to get denser and his vision became hazy. He suddenly felt that he could not see his nephew clearly. In his opinion, there was nothing to be afraid of in simple killing. He had peeled countless skins and knew the vital parts and nerves of the human body. Only things that were more evil and filthy than killing could move him. This was a field he had never known. For example, how to turn his sister into a beast without dignity, and how to kill an unfaithful father, drive his daughter crazy, and make most people think that the victim's death was caused by himself. Although he didn't want to admit it, he knew that he always had a natural fear of such things. 3 points of fear were born bad seeds of cruelty and corruption, and the remaining 7 points were fears that he might become such a person. Lena, that woman, how did you kill her father and drive her crazy? I didn't do anything. I just made her accept the cruelest fact. Cruel fact? What cruel fact? After thinking for a while, Sako whispered. The fact is that no matter how much she gives, she can never replace her mother. In her father's eyes, she will always be a substitute for another person, and she really gave her all her heart. Everything she lost and everything she gained can't escape the shadow of another person. Lena, her life has no value. The only value is to let her loved ones recall the good times with another person in the past. I know all this, I witnessed all this, and then I told Lena all this. She laughed, she cried, and she finally lived like another person. I probably helped her. Hector Sako's voice was not pleasant. His voice was a little hoarse and sharp, and his tone was sincere, like a child with a weak body. However, Hector sensed something terrible from his nephew's voice. The Emerald Territory is not the paradise of peace and happiness as described in the legend. The dark places that ordinary people cannot see are always more dangerous than most people imagine. In addition to the extremely vicious thugs, there is a kind of criminal that needs to be executed by the Nightblade himself. This kind of criminal is no different from ordinary people. Most of the time, they have nothing to do with words like evil and cruel that represent evil people. Before the crime is exposed, no one would think about what is hidden in the dark side of an ordinary person. Hector called it talent, a unique hunting talent, and each talent is a devastation and blasphemy against human nature. Sako seems to have such a talent, just like his father Brian, and he doesn't seem to understand what his talent means. Staring at Sako holding the rein, Hector suddenly had an urge to kill the monster. In just a moment, the urge turned into action. He clamped his fingers on the small blade, coated with poison in the pocket. He only needed to scratch Sako's skin at any point, and the deadly toxin would take the monster's life. No matter how terrible the monster is, as long as it stops breathing, it will be nothing more than a pile of rotten meat that will always decay. Unfortunately, Rosevilla Area B2. Sarko took the silver-etched pattern key thrown by his uncle, with hope in his eyes. My only request is that you are not allowed to touch my sister. If you still want to see her, you'd better abide by the agreement. The patter of raindrops made a rhythm of rain, covering the sound of the man's footsteps as he left, and also covering up the worries of his brother. Sarko, who was already soaked, did not move. He held the key with both hands, and slowly put it on his forehead, just as eagerly as he put his forehead on Lena's forehead. This was a desire to express from the soul, and this desire to express made him feel that he was a thoughtful person. He seemed to be back in Granlet's mansion, back to that special night. I'm the same as you, Lena. Life never belongs to me. We are destined to be stepping stones for others, and live for others. We are muddle-headed, but sometimes we inadvertently think about what the meaning of all this is. The knocked-out father was lying on the bed. The fear on the girl's face gradually faded, and a touch of confusion appeared. I hid in the closet, and looked at your dozen clothes. None of them fit. I listened to your conversation. Your father never cared about your feelings. He always talked about your mother. He knew that Granlet was dangerous, but he still chose to bring you here. He allowed you to be isolated by others, and let your whole world become his color. You are so humble, that you even need to use your mother as a topic to express your emotions. You are like an empty shell, breathing, but without a soul. He gave up everything for love, but never left you half a point. Letting go of the girl whose eyes were already red and swollen and whose expression was already a little dull, Sarko took out a small brown bottle and placed it in the girl's palm. The girl recognized that her father would take one pill every time before foreplay. You have never had Lena's identity, but now you have a chance to love him as Lena instead of your mother. Like he said, love him with all your heart and don't consider any problems. Prove to your father that you are Lena, not a substitute for someone else. After swallowing more than a dozen pills, even in a coma, there was a risk of a hole in the ceiling. Sarko propped up his chin and leaned back in the chair. He finally understood that human breathing could be so powerful. C-386 was locked up in the small dark room. It will take 2 days before he can reapply for release. CAC. Chapter 390 War Angel. In the 22nd year of the Narxan calendar, on September 11th, the combat supplies from the Emerald Territory arrived at Northumberland smoothly under the continuous transportation of large ships. Because the ships equipped with magic crystal power devices can go upstream at a higher speed, Lester did not choose to take the land route at the Goral Mountains this time, but went north from the Black Iron River underground water network of the Immortal Fortress, leaving behind some blind bandits who blocked the road. The new transportation route made the arrival time half a month faster than taking the land route. The cold-resistant and logistical supplies that were enough to supply 30,000 people for half a year gave the Emerald Territory full confidence in the battle. After integrating Alice's 5,000 people, the 20,000 native soldiers of the Emerald Territory and the Narxan War Group of Northumberland were reorganized into the Alice Legion and the Margaret Legion, led by Alice and Margaret respectively. After pulling out the formation and changing into cold-resistant clothes, the Legion rushed straight to the Carias Anvil. On October 15th, the two assembled legions officially launched an artillery attack on the southern foot of the northern peak of the Three Lion Fang. The crossbows and catapults of the Immortal Shield Bow hit the magic energy shield that suddenly rose. The Hedi soldiers on the city wall launched a counterattack, but were blocked by the shield of the Black Rose Mage. On November 1st, the magic shield energy of the Carias Anvil ran out, and the city wall collapsed. The Margaret Legion, with the Narxan Blackguard as the vanguard, successfully occupied the city tower under the cover of the Black Rose Mage. Under the crazy offensive, the Hedi people retreated step by step. The Legion soldiers launched several attacks on the inner city fortress built on the mountain, but with little effect. The Legion was blocked under the Red Blackring Rock. Because the Hedi people were high above, the soldiers of the Emerald Territory suffered a lot. Under the magic attack of the Hedi people, the two legions began to suffer casualties. With the reinforcement of the Hedi people coming from the north side of the mountain city barrier finally blocked the sharp edge of the Emerald Territory. After the military meeting, Lester, who had been watching the battle, knew that the terrain of the Pagras Three Peaks was steep and difficult to defend, and decided to send out extraordinary combat power. Since he could not attack at will, this was the only reason for him to bring Misa here. At dawn on November 5th, the sky was still in darkness. On the ramparts of the Anvil Mountain city of Karas, General Guga was inspecting the defense deployment with a serious face, constantly reminding the soldiers holding torches to avoid the incoming magic attacks. There were a total of 30,000 defenders in the fortress, and nearly 10,000 soldiers had been lost under the attack of the Emerald Territory. If the losses in the Battle of Shelley Fortress and the battle between Norska Castle and Anarkson War were counted, the 60,000 soldiers who went south to participate in the war had lost nearly 1/3 of their troops. The high casualties began after encountering the Emerald Territory's legion. He had deeply realized how difficult his enemy was, and at this time he was unwilling to make any mistakes on the battlefield. Soldiers with exhausted mana were given a chance to recover by rotating soldiers in batches, while the remaining ordinary people were responsible for throwing the prepared rolling stones and battering rams down the mountain. Relying on the easy to defend and difficult to attack mountain city walls, the Hidi people only needed to defend the zigzag mountain wall in the south to block the enemy's attack. Even so, Guga did not dare to take it lightly. Whenever there was a battle, he would personally inspect the battle situation and check for loopholes. Standing on the zigzag wall and looking down, the more than 20-meter high inverted, inclined mountain wall was daunting. The hard mountain body, which was as hard as a knife and an axe, was poured with special cement wall ash. Even the terrible dark red siege crossbow could only be inserted shallowly into the rock wall to bring out a spider web, and could not break the wall at all. The mountain wall itself was built on the mountain, and it was impossible to destroy the wall by ordinary means. If you don't consider magic attacks, if you want to take down this mountain city by ordinary means, you may have to fill the wall with corpses. Unless an attack was launched from the north side of the mountain from top to bottom, even Guga himself could not think of any way to break through such a dangerous city. When Guga made a round of inspection, the sky in the distance had already turned pale. Woo 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 woo, the heavy trumpet sound echoed in the sky, and all the 10 city soldiers relaxed a little, looking into the looming depths of the surging black tide. Alert! 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 Defense mage, activate the spell shield. The captain's rough voice made everyone's heart rise to their throat again, and they quickly retracted their heads behind the city wall. Sure enough, light suddenly lit up in the darkness, and more than a dozen magic circles flashed with dazzling halos. After a few seconds, hot or cold shaping magic attacked from under the city, exploded on the top of the city wall, and was blocked by the transparent energy shield. Ha! That's all the Narkson barbarian wizards can do. Next they will definitely throw those explosive all-chemical crossbows, and then use their catapults to throw small stones all day, as if we will surrender. They have already run out of tricks. It's impossible for them to break through our defenses. If you ask me, it's just that General Gurgle is too nervous. We don't need to torture ourselves like this every day. SHHHHH. Lord Gurgle is over there, don't you see him? Hiss. Gurgle frowned and didn't pay attention to the soldiers' whispered conversation. He just focused on the gradually brightening black tide 1,000 meters away. He vaguely realized that this time the black tide seemed to be about 500 meters closer than before, completely within the attack range of their own magic. The soldiers of the Emerald Territory had never done this before. Prepare the first round of spells. Release. Prepare the second round of spells. Release. Prepare the third round of spells. Release. In the rain of light, the Emerald Territory's front line in the distance also held up a large magic shield, and the magic shield was still decaying at a speed visible to the naked eye, and there was no way it could last long. Once the shield was broken, the soldiers of the Emerald Territory would be completely exposed to the magic attack. According to the style of the Emerald Territory, they would definitely not allow the soldiers to be slaughtered. At that time, withdrawal would be the only option. The sun peeked out from the top of the mountain in the east, dispelling the darkness of the earth. Just when the Hidi people on the city wall were a little relaxed, a familiar and terrifying scream came from afar. Everyone, including the defensive mages supporting the shield, desperately retreated behind the city wall. The next moment, a shocking explosion spread on the city wall, followed by a bunch of life-consuming flames. Even though they had been prepared for a long time, Dozens of unlucky soldiers were still turned into firemen in the flames and became charred corpses. In the free time of reloading the crossbow, the cursing Hidi wizard began to prepare magic again. Climbing up from the ground, Guga heard a discordant rhythm in the noise. It was like the sound of wings flapping. What is that? Is there something flying? Oh my god. There is a person in the sky. Is that the legendary angel? So beautiful. Guga was stunned and looked in the direction the soldiers were pointing. Chapter 391 Divine Sword breaks the city. 4,000 meters away in the cloudy sky, facing the golden dawn in the east, a human-shaped figure flapping its wings was holding high a sharp sword that was gradually emitting divine light. As the sword-emitting flames became brighter and brighter, a strong pressure and heat wave that made people's breath suffocate came over them. That's the angel from the Emerald Territory. He actually came. After the shock, the sudden life and death crisis finally made his brain realize the danger, and Gujaya shouted desperately, "Hold up the shield! Hold up the shield!" In fact, even if Gujaya didn't say it, the other soldiers also realized the seriousness of the matter. The reason why they didn't run away was because they couldn't figure out how strong such an attack was, and they had a bit of luck in their hearts. The solid magic shield soon appeared on the top of the city edge. Facing the unknown attack, everyone tried their best. Finally, under the gaze of tens of thousands of people, the angel, surrounded by flames in the sky, swung down the flaming sword. The arc-shaped flaming waves with beautiful tail flames crossed the sky, getting bigger and bigger, and appeared in the middle of the city wall in an instant, cutting diagonally into the mountain wall. In the raging heat wave, the shield only resisted for a moment before the ripples tore it apart, as smooth as a hot knife cutting butter. Before they could even wail, hundreds of soldiers hiding behind the mountain wall on the cutting line melted and evaporated on the spot into ashes. A huge cut mark visible to the naked eye appeared on the rock wall, and the cut emitted a scorching high temperature, emitting a nearly white glare like lava, flowing down the city in liquid form. Witnessing the attack, that was like a divine punishment, the soldiers on the city wall began to tremble uncontrollably. The irresistible impact of the divine power made everyone fall into a state of fear. Attack the target in the air. This time, Guga didn't need to speak. The attack mage, who had recovered his breath, spontaneously launched a crazy attack on the terrible enemy 1,000 meters away. To everyone's surprise, the angel in the sky had no intention of dodging, but just raised the sword again and began to accumulate divine power. Seeing that the overwhelming energy attack was about to fly in front of the angel, a thin arc-shaped ice blue shield blocked the angel without warning, blocking hundreds of attacks that should have hit the target accurately. The explosions from the collision of spells continued, and layers of ripples spread on the magic shield, but they could not break through the thin magic shield. Seeing that the situation had fallen into a stalemate, facing the unreasonable and powerful enemy, the Hidi people had no way to deal with it. "General Gujaya, how should we deal with that flying monster? If this continues, I'm afraid the soldiers will be defeated." Horace, who led the army to deal with Northenberg, was promoted by Gujaya to become the new Deputy Legion Commander after the disappearance of Deputy Legion Commander Mosley. Gujaya could not give any solution to Horace's question for a while. "I will ask for help from Lord Keelatha. Enemies of this level can only be fought with the Spear of Godkiller. Before that, we must defend the Anvil of Karas. Once the Anvil of Karas is lost, the North Sea Fortress will become an isolated city, and the Naxans will be able to march straight in, cross the Pagras Mountains, and take the Hidi city directly. At that time, we will be in a passive state, so no matter what the cost, we must defend this place. I don't believe that such a powerful attack, that monster can continue to release such power. Go, General Horace, prove to me the courage of the Hidi people. Let the soldiers stand a little more dispersed, and try to avoid intensive casualties as much as possible." Looking deeply at Guga, whose face was still calm, Horace nodded heavily. "I understand." After leaving Guga, Horace ran along the city wall and shouted to boost the low morale, so that the Hidi soldiers who were thinking of retreating could stabilize again. "Lord Guga has sent people to ask for help from the Lord of the city. The Spear of Godslayer will arrive here soon. Before that, we must defend the Anvil of Karas. We must let the Naxans know that there are no cowards among the Hidi people. The monster's attack cannot be released multiple times. As long as it survives these few times, the monster will lose its attack ability. The Spear of Godslayer should be able to kill the winged man-eating monster. Hold the line. Don't gather together, disperse. Seeing that the situation gradually stabilized, Guga left the city wall to call the messenger, and wrote a letter for help with a serious face. Counting the time spent on the pigeon, Guga knew that he had to stay here for at least a week. If the monster could really launch such terrible attacks one after another, then the morale of the soldiers would collapse sooner or later. It would be better to evacuate in advance to save strength and wait for the Spear of Godslayer to kill the angel before taking back the Anvil of Chaos. It is definitely not a wise approach to defend a place under absolute power. After defeating the Emerald Territories army, Naxos will definitely not be a match for the Hidi people, and the goal of conquering the continent is just around the corner. After taking down the Immortal Fortress, we can slowly explore the mystery of the disappearance of the Mosley exploration team. Whether to defend with human lives or evacuate in advance depends on how much power the angels have and how many times they can launch such terrible attacks in a day. Originally going to return to the top of the city wall along the spiral stone steps, Guga's footsteps paused when he heard the soldier's words and finally stopped. He decided to wait a little longer before going up. No matter how powerful the angel's sword is, it is impossible to penetrate the mountain rock layer and attack here. He is the commander-in-chief, and he can boost morale, but there is no need to take unnecessary risks, which will only make the soldiers collapse faster. It's coming. It's coming again. Retreat. Retreat. It's over. I'm going to die. It's so hot. The terrified voices of the soldiers came from above, and Guga closed his eyes, as if he didn't hear it. The expected calm did not happen, and what followed was an irresistible disaster. A few seconds later, the ground shook, the entire fortress began to tremble, and a deafening rumble sounded. Guga couldn't imagine what kind of disaster had happened on the city wall to make such a terrible sound. Unable to stay any longer, Guga opened his eyes and rushed up. With just one look, he was overwhelmed with uncontrollable fear. Two words emerged in General Hida's mind. Divine punishment. A huge crack appeared on the city wall dozens of meters away. The raging flames burned the hard stones into juice. The nearly 15-meter-long city wall collapsed directly. The soldiers stationed on the collapsed city wall could not even be described as fragmented. Thousands of people were buried directly in the flames and stone ruins. The bottom of the V-shaped gap was only 2 meters away from the bottom of the city. On the distant horizon, the rumbling sound of horse hooves was approaching rapidly. The black tide surged, but the soldiers were still in a state of collapse and began to run for their lives like headless flies. The city wall was cut off. I traveled all day from a county in Yunnan to Taeyeon. I took a taxi, a private car, a bus, a train, a subway, and a plane. I opened my eyes at 5 o'clock and carried 20 kilograms of luggage. Finally, I returned to the company at 9:30 in the evening. I got off the plane exhausted and opened the writer's assistant. Damn, someone voted for me for a monthly ticket just for writing a leave application. Can I take a leave? I saw that it was only 9:30 in the evening. I can still try. When I got back to the company, I took out my notebook and my inspiration burst out. I succeeded. Finally, I hope that everyone will not have any psychological burden when voting for the monthly ticket. The original comment was that I was too happy and exhausted. There was a problem with the way I expressed it. No wonder someone in the group said that I ate cheese yesterday. I was still confused. Please forgive me for my unclear mind and honeyed mouth. I apologize to everyone. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 392 Iron Pearl's Love. The second flaming sword energy that came out of the blade was even stronger than the first one. Mishap, who had lost all her strength, could no longer maintain her divine wings. She fell down in the sky full of flickering lights and was lifted up by a gentle wind, perfectly falling into Lester's arms. Looking at the pale face in his arms, Lester felt a little distressed. "Fool, why are you working so hard? What should I do if something happens to you? Miss Hat turned her head to avoid the man's overly gentle gaze and said lightly, "It would be great if an extra person was killed by the fall." "Listen, Miss Hat, never say that about yourself." Hearing the woman say this, the man's face became particularly serious, which made the woman a little nervous, but her face was still very tense. "This will make me very sad." "Humph, stinky man, you only know how to say some words to make people happy. Don't think that I will be happy like this." Although she said this, the blonde woman's eyebrows unconsciously had a few more beautiful arcs. While the two were flirting, Margaret, with her ears erect, could not help but tighten her two-handed sword in her hand, wanting to cut something. The Legion commander rode on his warhorse, put down his helmet, covering his expressionless and cold face, and his hoarse and low voice echoed on the battlefield. "Order, majors pave the way, the whole army attacks." Woo woo woo, the horn of the general attack was blown by the bugler, and each formation rushed to the broken gap in the city wall in a predetermined order. The distance of 1,000 meters was quickly shortened. The light of magic flashed under the city wall, the flames were frozen by the ice, and the earth and rocks began to roll to form a slope. Following behind the Black Iron Guards, the Black Guards who were under sporadic magic attacks paid the casualties of more than a dozen people, successfully rushed to the gap in the city wall, and fought with the Haiti soldiers who were blocking the city wall. The advantage of long-range magic attack was broken in an instant. The swords of the Haiti soldiers could not break the Black Guards' plate armor, but they would be cut off by a sword the next moment, like a hot knife cutting butter. Before the bloodthirsty executioner entered the scene, the Haiti people were completely defeated, leaving behind hundreds of corpses, and fleeing desperately to the depths of the fortress. Many people who were in fear fell, and died under the trampling of their companions. Seeing that the situation was over, Gujira could only completely abandon the mountain city barrier, escape from the secret passage with his guards, and cross the mountains to the north side of the mountain. After capturing the city wall, the soldiers were divided into two groups. One part of the Black Iron Guard soldiers, mainly the bloodthirsty executioner with light armor and abnormal physical fitness, continued to chase and kill the fleeing enemy troops, while the other part opened the city gate and let the Dragon Lizard heavy armor knight into the city. Under the cover of the spear and shield soldiers, the crossbowmen quickly occupied the nearby high ground, and formed a military formation. After the Black Rose's perception wizard confirmed that there were no magic traps in the city, Margaret and Alice officially entered the city. The battle ended in the evening, and the Legion began to clean up the battlefield and count the casualties. Batches of captives tied with ropes were escorted by the Narcs and Black Iron Guards, and locked up in the dungeon on the spot. The various key points of the fortress have been completely controlled by the Legion. After losing more than 2,000 soldiers, including elite troops, the Carius Anvil completely fell into the hands of the Emerald Territory. It did not stop the army from crossing mountains and ridges to continue chasing the defeated soldiers. Alice was in charge of the outer city, and Margaret was in charge of the inner city. They settled down on the spot for a short rest. The battle report was soon placed in front of Lester. The Haiti people suffered 2,000 casualties, 3,000 prisoners, and our casualties were 2,000. In the dim candlelight, Lester's face was a little difficult to tell. At least Margaret couldn't tell whether the Lord of the Emerald Territory was satisfied or dissatisfied. Before leaving Valoran for Ionia, she was able to use her identity and special status as a woman to figure out some of the Lord's thoughts. But after returning from Ionia, she found that she could no longer see through the man she knew so well. After organizing her words, Margaret knelt on one knee and lowered her head, preparing to explain the difficulty of the siege to her man and her superiors in a tactful way. Lester, sir, although the battle report is ugly, but, in fact, when the Immortal Fortress captured Norska Castle, it cost 3 times as much as the Frost Kingdom soldiers. We can achieve this, which is enough to show how excellent the soldiers are. I know, Margaret, I know. I'm not dissatisfied. On the contrary, I'm satisfied. Whether it is you, Alice, other officers and soldiers, or the soldiers of the Emerald Territory, I'm very satisfied. This gives me some confidence in our future. There are not many soldiers who can suppress their fear and face death. In fact, I only gave the Emerald Territory the name of the Legion, and it is you who gave the Legion the real soul. Hearing this, the woman was stunned, and then she was helped up by the man. Now there are no outsiders. I have said it long ago. You don't need to be so respectful to me. Pursing her lips, Margaret took a step back and spoke. But I think that, no matter what time it is, I must make my position clear. Otherwise it will undermine your majesty. Moreover, whether as a man or as a lord, Lord Leicester deserves my heartfelt respect and admiration. I cannot take your kindness to me as a reason for me to be fearless. Observing Margaret's macro expression, Leicester sighed. This woman is still as always, stubborn and cute, so distressing. Moreover, the dignified commander of the Emerald Army, the general who is in charge of more than 30,000 soldiers and kills without blinking an eye, is having a little temper with me. The man came to this conclusion after a little thought. Although Margaret did not say it, she envied Miss Ha's treatment in her heart. Whether it was appearance or strength, Miss Ha, a demigod, far surpassed Margaret, who had already begun to grow old and entered middle age. It was not jealousy, but there was a sense of sadness. You are jealous. Hearing the man say this, Margaret could no longer hold her face, and a panicked look flashed away. No, I didn't. Look at you. You can't even speak. You're always like this when you're nervous. Although 21 years have passed unknowingly, in my opinion, you haven't changed at all. Leicester stroked the woman's rough and ugly face, scar, and decided that he had to ask Helena, the dissolute black wizard in the Black Rose Wizard Academy, CC 204 for details, for help, to see if she could make some skincare cream or anti-aging pills. No matter what you become, you are my iron pearl, the woman I love most in my life. Among all the people I know, only you, can I hand over the emerald collar to you without any suspicion, because I know that you will never betray me. I am old, have fought in many battles, and am very ugly from the wind and sun. If you love someone, you have to accept her completely. I know you may not believe me with words, but I will prove it to you with actions. No, I believe it. Iron Pearl took the initiative to hug the man in front of her. Her body was as soft as a shrimp that peed its pants in the dungeon, and the man was like the execution stake that supported the shrimp from collapsing on the ground. Bits and pieces flashed through her mind, and she whispered, Leicester, I will always believe in you, until the day I stop breathing. I really want to strangle the protagonist to death and snatch Margaret to warm my bed every day. Chapter 393 Khalitha's Plan. In the North Sea Fortress, an urgent military intelligence was sent to Kellis's room. Not daring to look at the two beautiful maids who were adding firewood to the big bathtub, the messenger lowered his head and stated his purpose. He motioned the messenger to put down the letter and leave. The strong red-haired man with a naked upper body and a layer of white light on his body bent his waist down, supported himself with his hands, and his feet left the ground and went straight up to the sky. The handstand lasted for about 10 minutes. The man breathed calmly and changed to supporting himself with one hand. He put his left hand behind his back and bent his right arm down and began to do handstand push-ups. The rhythm of the flexion was always kept at a stable frequency. After doing 200 handstand push-ups with each hand, the man stood up again by bending down. The man put his hands together and slowly exhaled a breath of turbid air. The moment the white light poured into his body, which had never produced a single drop of sweat, turned into a steamer. His body and muscles began to swell. His skin turned red, and his paws began to swell, as if they had their own life. He picked up a steel drill and pressed down with his arms. The steel drill, which was powerful enough to split mountains and break rocks, was perfectly folded in half and twisted into a twist between his deft fingers. The man's series of shocking movements were seen by two women in gauze. They expressed their admiration and obedience to the man without concealing their feelings. The man dispersed his magic and restored his swollen body to its original state. Kellis picked up a petite maid, stepped into the steaming bathtub, and sat on the spot, like an iron tower as immovable as a mountain, hot and indestructible. Seeing her little sister's face suddenly turn red, the taller woman's legs became a little weak, and she was really envious. Although the city lord's face is not handsome, it is full of masculinity, like a ball of blazing fire. Every move of the city lord is full of charm that makes women's hearts beat. Mary, read it to me. Yes. After receiving the order, Mary had to put away her thoughts and tore open the secret letter in front of Kalissa, unfolding the letter from the south. She secretly glanced at the city lord, but found that the city lord had closed his eyes, but Wendy in the city lord's arms looked patient. Not daring to continue reading, Mary said softly, "Lord Keelatha, please allow me to give you a very detailed report. Under the powerful attack of the winged monster woman, the indestructible mountain city barrier was directly cut off. In an instant, we lost the terrain advantage. In addition, the morale of the soldiers plummeted, and they fell into a state of rout. We are no longer able to continue to defend the Anvil of Karis. We can only retreat from the north peak of Pagras as much as possible to preserve our troops. Without the Anvil of Karis, the Narxans who have been reorganized will soon attack the North Sea from the Anvil of Karis. The North Sea Fortress and Hedi City may become the main targets of the attack. After the defense of Karis, I'm very sure that conventional extraordinary power is simply unable to fight against the flying monster woman in the Emerald Territory. Only by relying on the Spear of God killing, excavated from the ruins of the Hedi people, can we kill the monster. That is enough to crush all of us by surprise. I have already made a preliminary plan on how to lure out and kill the monster before it recovers its strength to attack the fortress. In the next battle, I need Lord Kalissa's cooperation to act out a play with me, make arrangements in advance, and deal a fatal blow to the monster." On the big bed, the last joy had passed, and the pinch marks on the necks turned blue-purple. Mary and Wendy's body temperatures were as cold jade, just like a man's hard and ruthless heart. Kalissa looked at the two women with regret for the last time, and after kissing them goodbye on their cold cherry lips, he pulled the cotton wool quilt over their bodies, pushing open the floor-to-ceiling crystal door of the balcony. Kalissa came to the circular observation deck and looked up at the bright and cold crescent moon above his head. For him, it was still a bit sad to end the lives of the two clothesmaids with his own hands. Mary and Wendy originally had no reason to die, and he did not believe that the two women who loved him deeply and were conquered by him forever would betray him. But Gujaya's plan was too perfect, so perfect that he could not tolerate any chess piece outside the plan to know the plan, and any possibility that the plan would fail. Because of this, Mary and Wendy had to die. He had studied the group of shadow assassins in the room at Emerald Territory countless times. In addition to being deadly enough, the most frightening thing was the ability to collect intelligence. He could not be sure whether the North Sea had been infiltrated. It was related to the war of founding a country, so he had to be perfect enough without leaving any loopholes. This was also the reason why he never let his family participate in key matters. Heda's road to conquest had just begun, and he could not tolerate any obstacles. When necessary, even his own children would be ruthlessly wiped out. Gujaya's plan included a second angel who might arrive on the battlefield out of hatred. If the plan was to be executed perfectly, the first one must be killed first. By then, after losing two monsters that possessed divine power, the soldiers of the Emerald Territory would definitely not be the opponent of the War Golem, no matter how terrible they were. Other forces all believed that the mastery of attributeless magic was the reason why the Hedi people dared to betray and attack Naxos. In fact, the War Golem that was being restored in the underground ruins of Hedi City was the opportunity for the Hedi people to truly conquer the Valoran continent. The War Golem was driven by a magic core and could independently transform the magical element in the surrounding environment into pure magical energy, giving the tall colossus terrible mobility and destructive power, as well as the ability to attack from a distance. In front of the colossus, even the black rock iron wall of the immortal fortress was just a slightly higher pile of stones, and all the strong city barriers were as fragile as dead branches. The reason why the attack on Naxos was launched before the golem was fully restored was that the main force of Naxos was trapped in the Shelly fortress by the Freljord people, and the great sage had confirmed through the energy crystal that the second underground ruins were near the Goral mountains south of Mount Pagras. Originally, all the plans were going perfectly until the Emerald Territory intervened, causing unexpected situations in the plan. Not only did the Narxan Vakal Warband not die in the Shelly fortress, but it also launched an attack on the North Sea. If it weren't for the unknown accidents and the exploration of the Goral mountains, Hedi might have been able to obtain a more powerful energy tower technology. In short, the new ruins exploration plan must be established after the annihilation of the Emerald Territory Legion. It can be said that the Emerald Territory's army is the biggest obstacle for Hiti to conquer the world. Thoughts flowed in his mind like lightning, and in front of him was a vast southern land. The man's guilt for Medianweli also disappeared completely. No matter how gentle the moon is, it will succumb to the sun, and the stars are the sun's foil. He wants to be the only sun, and for this, he can give up the stars and the waxing moon. He wants to be the only king of Valoran. PS1. I apologize to everyone. I was sick in yesterday's comments. I was confused after running around all day. I wanted to express my joy, but my mind was twitching, and my little mouth was accidentally smeared with honey, kissing the readers' mouths. To be honest, after running around all day, I saw everyone's love for the work, so I endured the fatigue, and worked hard to finish 2 chapters, turning the leave request into waste paper. It should have been a happy ending, but it made the readers apologize to me. I'm a fool. Please forgive me, cack. I won't kiss everyone's mouths, tack. PS2, C386 failed to apply for the 2nd time, and I have to wait for 2 more days. To be honest, I can't pass it, even if I delete the dialogues and plots that express the core. At this point, I don't know how to change it. I guess I have to rewrite it. PS3, to make up for my mistake, I will write until 12 o'clock today, and try to finish the remaining 1 update today, and the 2 updates tomorrow. I haven't forgotten that I still owe you 4 updates. The general manager of the project department rushed me back to the headquarters, so I have time to write more. PS4, in fact, I have long known that serious war writing may not be read by anyone. Most readers still like to read some popular heroic stories and drip plots. Everyone knows drip plots. They are too racist, so I can't write too much. Therefore, in the next story, I will condense the plot as much as possible and speed up the pace. Maybe it will give you some motivation to follow. I guess you will be willing to follow the story when it progresses to a familiar heroic story. Chapter 394, The Anvil of Calais. Did you know that the name of the Anvil of Calais comes from an ancient Freljord legend? What legend? Is it related to the Freljord cattle and horse gods you told me when I was a child? Surrounded by Alice, Margaret and Missa holding torches, Lester walked into the depths of the cave. Yes, it is related to lava and the god of forging, Orn. Sure enough, Missa looked as if it was not what I expected. Among the 3 peaks of Pagras, only the North Peak is the largest and tallest. Unlike the South Peak and the main peak, which are rich in red copper, the mountain body of the North Peak is mostly black and grey. There are huge magnetite veins deep underground, rich in high quality coal and iron resources. The strategic location is extremely special and suitable for making high altitude furnaces. Being deep in the magnetite cave also means that the compass in Lester's hand does not work at all, and he can only rely on memory to record the direction he is moving. It is said that 1,000 years ago, when Freljord was still Volrigid, a group of Valorans who were eager to obtain the wisdom of forging traveled thousands of miles to the north to find Dawn. 3 years later, they could not find Dawn. Just when people were about to give up, a man named Calais threw his beloved anvil directly into the crack of the hill. He said, "You go. If you can't get the wisdom of the god of forging, I would rather die here." Most people understand Calais' biased behavior and therefore respect Calais. In fact, Calais' father was a blacksmith. He was fascinated by forging since he was a child, watching all kinds of beautiful ores melt in the furnace and then being hammered into various exquisite weapons by his father. Calais decided to be the greatest blacksmith in the world. Feeling that the temperature was much higher than before, Margaret said casually, "Let me guess, Calais found that Orn?" "Yes." Lester smiled slightly. In fact, Calais' anvil happened to fall into Orn's nostrils, hitting his smart head hard. Waking up from his deep sleep, Orn quickly figured out what happened to him. In order to avoid the lava and fire coming out of his nose and killing the mortal believers who were looking for him on his body, Orn could only hold his breath and get up from the ground. Instantly, the earth shook. Except for Calais, everyone thought that the earth was angry and they were going to die. Only Calais shouted Orn's name loudly, which made Orn more interested in the tiny human on him. He thought that Callias could understand what he said, while the other mortals were simply stupid and didn't understand anything. Great god of forging Ornn, I want to be the greatest blacksmith in the world. Callias said this to Ornn after he and his companions got off Ornn. Can humans talk to gods like this? It depends on who it is. If it's Ornn's brother, Valibar, the god of thunder, who dares to speak like that, he might not live to see the next breath. How interesting. Lester continued as he continued to walk down the cave. With a chew, Ornn first sneezed and sprayed the anvil in his head out of his nostrils in the form of molten iron, which was all over the ground. He then used the various metal solutions that were all over the ground to make a new anvil, and then Ornn said to Keris, mumble mumble. Mumble mumble? Is this the language of the gods? Alice looked at Lester in awe. She seemed to imagine a grand scene of a god as great as a mountain using the language of the gods to enlighten mortals. Only Lester imagined the silly scene of Ornn dancing in reverse. CTRL+3. There was no way. As a player who had played the game and was familiar with the background, he really couldn't feel any awe for the game characters, even if the former game characters were now standing in front of him and could sneeze him to death. Well, you could say that. In fact, Ornn meant to let Callias give it a try. Unlike his companions, who could not understand Ornn's words and were preparing to seek Ornn's wisdom, Callias picked up the new anvil forged for him by the god of forge and began to forge weapons with the tools he had with him using the molten metal that had not yet cooled on the ground. Soon he forged a dagger that could cut iron like mud. Looking at the dagger with Callias's personal style, Ornn shook his head and muttered with disappointment. In his opinion, the craftsmanship of mortals is really too crude. Is it that the weapons made by Callias cannot satisfy Ornn? Yes. How can the works made by mortals with painstaking efforts enter the eyes of the god of forge? Ornn moved his body and quickly left Callias and the others, but he did not take back the anvil he made for Callias. The molten metal flowing out of Ornn's body is definitely not an ordinary thing. Even from our current perspective, it is a special forging artifact. This artifact was created because of Callias, so it is called the Callias Anvil. It turns out that the Callias Anvil is not the name of this place, but the name of an anvil. To be precise, it is the name of a legendary figure and his anvil. No matter how hard the metal ingot is, it can be easily shaped and forged by hammering on the Callias Anvil. Surprisingly, this does not involve some mysterious magic, but only depends on the anvil forged with various molten metals. Ornn's forging skills far exceed the level that humans can understand. In fact, although Ornn looks stupid, he actually has a very strict bottom line and a reliable style of doing things. The magical anvil is Ornn's compensation to Callias and others. Even if Callias is unwilling, he knows that he has no way to get Ornn's recognition now, so he chooses to leave with his people. In this way, Callias returned to the place where they started with the anvil made by the god of forging himself. In the days that followed, in order to hone his forging skills, Callias devoted himself to forging, creating powerful weapons and armor for the warriors of the tribe. The tribe defeated many powerful enemies. Time flies, and Callias's forging skills become more and more sophisticated. When he is about to enter old age, he feels that his time is running out. He carries his forging tools and embarks on the road to find Ornn. He wants Ornn to judge his forgings again before he dies. This is his lifelong goal as a blacksmith. This time, he has become the master blacksmith of the tribe and left his beloved anvil in the tribe. He refused the requests of his companions and descendants to accompany him and left alone. Did Callias succeed? He didn't come back, so no one knows whether he succeeded or not. Maybe I can ask Ornn when I see him in the future, Lester said softly when he came to the underground furnace workshop of Gugu with boiling lava. It's been too long, so long that no one knows the whereabouts of Callias Anvil. All that is left for us, the descendants, is these ancient and hot lava and furnace fire. Question: did Callias succeed? Chapter 395 Stalemate. At a mountain fortress, where large iron forging workshops can be built, the army of Emerald Territory did not choose to stay for long. Emerald Territory does not lack coal and iron mines, and it is a war period, so it will not consume extra manpower to operate the Callias Anvil. In November, the Margaret Legion cut off the connection and logistics supply line between the North Sea Fortress and Hedi City with the Right Army, and surrounded the left side of the North Sea Fortress with the Alice Legion as the left army, making the North Sea Fortress, which lost its supply line, a veritable isolated city. After all, the left and right armies are not like the Frost Kingdom and the Hedi people, who are not in harmony with each other. After surrounding the Shelley Fortress, one played a fake game and the other danced a real dance, and spent the whole day fishing. The catapults and siege shields launched a fierce attack on the walls of the North Sea Fortress. The few stones and trees near the garrison were all collected, which made the siege equipment much less useful. Later, the army of the Emerald Territory used catapults to throw half-dried hardshit, which disgusted the Hedi people. It did not cause much harm, but was extremely insulting. The last month passed under the harassment of Guga's guerrilla mage corps, and time came to the next year. The mobility of the Guga corps riding on war horses was greatly improved. Under the order of King Mansa of Hedi City, the 5,000 selected elite mages could cast spells continuously on horseback day and night, causing great trouble to Margaret's corps. The grasslands of the North Sea were flat, and the magic cavalry came and went like the wind and dragons. The corps directly hid in Hedi City when they were forced to chase. In the absence of care, they touched the tiger's butt all day, making the tiger's tail exhausted. As for while Lester did not send out Shur or Evelyn to deal with the enemy on horseback, it was not because he could not, but because he did not want to do so. First, the fundamental reason why he created the Emerald Territory and became the Lord was not to be a nanny. If he had to rely on himself and his extraordinary power to solve all situations, then the Emerald Territory would not have any growth. He built the Emerald Territory to be lazy and to enhance his own strength, not to become a big enemy who protects the Emerald Territory. Second, the Hedi people have a hidden magic army with unknown number and unknown movements. This army is called the Spear of God Killing by the Hedi people themselves. According to the Hedi captives, it can pose a fatal threat to Mishap. The wind dragon beast Shur, who is far inferior to Mishap, may be directly hit, or even killed instantly. Even if he rides Shur to take action personally, Lester himself will be at risk of a painful anus. Having come to this point today, Lester will naturally not take such a life and death risk when it is unnecessary. It is not his style to swing a knife and rush without thinking. The most tired were the Black Rose mages who defended against sneak attacks every day. Perhaps because they experienced too many dangerous situations, many of the mages accompanying the army broke through their own reserve limits after being exhausted. They used defensive magic to perfection and grew rapidly. Even so, the situation of being in a passive defensive posture did not make the Black Rose mages much easier, because Guga's guerrilla magic cavalry was also constantly improving on the battlefield, which profoundly demonstrated the evolutionary law of use it or lose it. It was also because they were restrained and could not use extra magic to resist the magic attacks of the soldiers defending the city during the siege, and because of the cold climate in the north. The Emerald Territory's Legion never launched a full-scale attack. It was just a stalemate with the Hedi people on the prairie to find each other's weaknesses and engage in small-scale tragic encounters. It was February, and the weather was getting warmer. The two Nightblade assassins who had sneaked into the North Sea Fortress before the war and the Black Rose mage disguised as a Hedi mage struggled to pass an important piece of information through the magic crystal under the eyes of the Hedi detection mages. When this information appeared in the ears of Lester and Margaret, they knew that the time to break the city had come. The frail-jawed cold wind from the northwest was still howling on the grassland, but there was also a wisp of warm sea breeze from the Watcher's Sea. After almost a year of long war, although there have never been major casualties, the morale of the soldiers in the Emerald Territory is still a little low, and they have begun to miss the good times in the Emerald Territory. This is an inevitable result of non-local warfare, and it is also the delaying effect that the Hedi people want to see. The surrounding villages are deserted, and it has become unrealistic to forcibly collect grain. Seeing that there was no sign of food shortage in the North Sea Fortress, Margaret, who was aware of the situation of the Legion, decided to attack the North Sea Fortress as soon as possible. After taking over the North Sea Fortress, she would reduce the space for the Hedi people to move around, seize Hedi City, and then conduct secondary development of the Atlan underground ruins according to Lester's requirements. With Lester's consent, Margaret contacted the Alice Legion on the west side of the North Sea Fortress through the Mage, and the time was set for March 4th. Before March 4th, the Emerald Territory needed to deal with the Hedi people's ace unit with the greatest threat, the Spear of Godkiller. The initial intelligence source of the Spear of Godkiller came from the Hedi captives of the Anvil of Karaos. After many confessions and tortures, Lester and others had a preliminary understanding of the Spear of Godkiller, which the Hedi people were most proud of and revered. The Spear of Godkiller was the ace mage unit under the command of the Hedi city lord Kalyasa. It is said that this unit of less than 1,000 people possessed several powerful magic items excavated from the Atlan ruins, which were powerful enough to threaten the angel Mishap. At least in the eyes of the Hedi people, the Spear of Godkiller can threaten Mishap, but as for how to threaten, most people can't explain it. Margaret and others, including Mishap, didn't care, but Lester was very cautious. He stopped the women from being careless and told them about his general experience in the Goral Mountains. This made the women understand the seriousness of the matter and completely cut off the idea of sending Mishap to break the city by force. Lester had long understood how terrible the power of the Atlans was through the last Atlans, Lily. Now it was unrealistic to deliberately go to the Goral Mountains to ask Lily about the information of Atlan's weapons. It was not that Lily was unwilling to tell, but Lily had left the Runeland and went to another unknown evil realm. If the Spear of Godkiller really held some kind of Atlan's Godkiller weapon, then the weapon that could destroy the body of a demigod would definitely cause fatal damage to the Emerald Leader Corps and even Lester himself. Knowing this, neither Lester nor Margaret would let Mishap take any risk to forcefully break into the city. In addition, the news of the Spear of Godslayer was learned by the Nightblade assassin lurking in the North Sea Fortress, and a targeted action was slowly unfolding. I just finished writing this update at 12 o'clock. I have to go to work in the morning. I wish all candidates to perform 200% perfectly, get into the university of their choice, enjoy college life, and remember to complete the subscription and reward after you start working and make money. Chapter 396. Who are you living for? February 28th, evening. Completely different from the immovable state in the eyes of the outsiders, the North Sea Fortress has begun to suffer from a serious shortage of food. The Hedi soldiers on the streets patrolled intermittently in teams of 3. Some residents living in the North Sea Fortress fell into a state of severe hunger due to the forced collection of rations. After the soldiers executed more than a dozen madmen who attacked their own kind due to hunger, those who could not get food could only starve to death. Apart from their own kind, they could not find any other food. All supplies were rationed to the soldiers first, half a meal in wartime and a quarter of a meal on weekdays. There was no need to be inactive except for patrolling and garrisoning. This was the reason why the North Sea Fortress could hold out after being besieged for 2 months. On the other hand, Edwin and Lance, the third generation killers of the Night's Edge who had long been infiltrated into the city and hidden in the tavern to start their work, took advantage of the time when the tavern owner was asleep and successfully slipped out of their hiding place. The two had also been hungry for more than a month, and their bodies had become much thinner, with their ribs clearly visible. If the tavern owner with a strong background had not stored a lot of food, Edwin and Lance would not have been able to hold out for so long. As for how to eat the food in the tavern without being discovered, the two of them naturally had their own ways. When the footsteps of the soldiers outside the window faded away, Edwin, who was shorter in stature, opened the window a crack, and the man lowered his voice. "See that cylindrical building? That's the magic tower where the Spear of Godslayer is stationed. We need to let Ross pass on this information." "Where did you get the information? Is it reliable?" Facing Lance's question, Edwin sneered. "Of course it's reliable. When I sneaked in last night, I happened to run into Kellis's personal maid. She told me everything, including her plan to use the Spear of Godslayer against Lady Mishap. I have calculated it many times and it's very true." "What about the maid?" "Of course she was killed. I was wondering why there were so many people patrolling this morning." "Then you dealt with the maid." "Kallisa must have known that the location of the Spear of Godslayer had been exposed and had moved it long ago. Do you think I didn't think of this? After that maid, I deliberately found other servants who served Kallisa closely to confirm the situation. Their words were consistent and there was no discrepancy." Edwin closed the window and whispered, In fact, the Spear of God's lair cannot be moved during the charging period. Once it is moved, all the previous efforts will be wasted. Simply put, in order to activate the Spear of God's lair, you need to first build an energy storage crystal array, let hundreds of Hedi mages take turns inputting magic into the array to slowly store energy, and after completing the basic energy storage, the most critical guidance core is used to highly purify and compress the energy in the array, and use the light spear to kill the target in a targeted manner. The longer the energy is stored, the greater the power. In order to kill Lord Mishap, the Hedi people started charging the Spear of God's lair a month ago, and our soldiers will attack at any time now. Kelazar will never dismantle the energy storage crystal at this time and waste all the previous efforts. He will only send more defense forces to defend the magic tower. In the eyes of the Hedi people, as long as we can kill Lord Mishap, siege equipment alone will not be able to break through the walls of the North Sea Fortress, and we can only retreat. So whether it is Kelazar or Lady Margaret, they are waiting for the other party to play their trump card first. Whoever makes the first move will lose. After pondering for a while, Lance finally agreed with Edwin. This is a serious matter and there must not be any mistakes. I will go to the magic tower tonight to take a look. If things are really as you said, the defense there will definitely be greatly strengthened. After tonight, we will decide whether to pass on this information. Besides, it is not easy for Master Ross to break through the magic blockade of the Hedi people. We still have a lot to do. That's it. Be careful tonight, and don't be reckless. Don't worry, I'm just watching from a distance. If you get caught, it will just prove that your information and judgment are true. The information was passed by Master Ross. Lance, who tried to investigate the magic tower, chose to commit suicide after failing. Now Hedi City is under full search and martial law to find the source of the magic fluctuations. Edwin and Ross are in a very dangerous situation. The North Sea Fortress has seen that the decisive battle will be in these few days. In addition to the exposed Lance, Kelazar sent many defense mages to protect the magic tower, where the Spear of God's lair is located. Before the Spear of God's lair is destroyed, Mishap must not be exposed. In the big tent, Lester's voice sounded a little heavy. In a world dominated by supernatural powers, mortals seem too insignificant. If there were no messy magic, he would have enough confidence to take down the North Sea Fortress and Hedi City with his powerful soldiers. But at this moment, he was hindered by the Spear of God Killer. In fact, it was not just Mishap. If the Hedi people knew the exact location of the Lord of the Emerald Territory, the Spear of Light would not fly to Mishap, but directly to Lester. The invisible Spear of God Killer was like a sword of Damocles hanging over everyone's head, threatening everyone's life. Margaret said in a deep voice, clicking the small circle on the west side of the simple map of the North Sea Fortress. In other words, destroying that magic tower will make the Spear of God's lair no longer a threat. Yes, the problem now is that we must completely destroy the magic tower before the general attack. It requires not only sufficiently strong destructive power, but also an attack angle that bypasses the city defense. The city wall is too high, and it is impossible to destroy the magic tower by siege crossbows. This can only be done through high altitude attacks. The Hedi people cannot defend against attacks from the sky. I'll chop down the magic tower with one knife, and then chop down the city wall. Mishap, who was holding the fire rune blade, had just opened her mouth coldly when Lester hit her golden hair with a hand knife, causing Mishap to scream in pain. She dropped the fire rune blade and squatted on the ground with her head in her arms. You idiot, you only know how to chop, chop, chop. You're not the hand of Narxus, so why are you more addicted to chopping than me? I've already told you that the Spear of God's lair is aimed at you, and you're still messing with me here. Hand of Narxus. Margaret and Alice looked at each other in confusion at this inexplicable title, but Mishap put down her hands that were hugging her head, her emotions a little out of control. What else? Is there any other way besides this? If I don't go, the only ones who can go are Zaya and you, right? With your and Zaya's styles, you will definitely not accept partners other than each other. The Spear of God's lair is so powerful. If I die, the Emerald Territory still has Zina to protect it. What if you die? What if the Spear of God's lair really hits Zaya and you and kills you? Then the Emerald Territory will be really finished. 100 Zinas, and I will be useless. Who do you think everyone is fighting for? What's the point of our fighting if you die? You have been missing for more than 5 years, and there has been no news at all. Do you know how important you are to us? Miss Hap, who vented her worries and sadness, had tears in her eyes. Turning her head to look at the others who were keeping their heads down and silent, Lester sighed. I won't leave again, but this time there will be no better choice except for Zaya, and I compared with you, the Spear of Godslayer is much less threatening to me. I'm sure I can block the attack of the Spear of Godslayer. I'm not going to Ionia for fun this time. Chapter 397 Sharp blade in hand, punishing all parties. 4,000 meters above the North Sea Fortress, a huge dragon bat was flapping its wings and descending rapidly. It approached the west of the city amidst the flashing magic attacks, and the magic shield exploded with a brilliant flame. The fish has taken the bait, but it is the silver-winged dragon bird. I heard that the flying dragon is only allowed to be ridden by Lord Lester. Could it be that the Lord of the Emerald Territory has come in person? In a low building far away from the Mage Tower, Kellis squinted his eyes and looked at the silver light swooping down against the river of light in the sky, frowning. Originally, he wanted to kill the angel with the Spear of Godkiller hidden in another location during the period of weakness after the angel attacked the magic tower, but he didn't expect that another big fish would come. If it is really the Lord of the Emerald Territory, it is worthwhile to attack. My lord, do you want to launch an attack? The Archmage of the Secret Force, Spear of Godkiller, Yerubis, said respectfully. After thinking for a while, and weighing the pros and cons, Kellis shook his head and said, it is said that Lester, the Lord of Emerald Territory, is also an ice elemental mage. If he loses some of his energy, he may not be able to kill the other party in one go. Moreover, although killing the Lord of Emerald Territory can have a huge impact on the soldiers of Emerald Territory, there is no way to guarantee that the Guiding Stone can still kill the angel after consuming some of its energy. If the angel does not die, we will definitely lose this battle. Therefore, Yerubis, let him blow it up. As long as the angel dies, the mortal army of Emerald Territory will definitely not be our opponent. At that time, whether it is Lester or another angel, they will definitely die. I understand. As a huge jar-like object was dropped by the dragon bird's front claws, a flash of fire lit up, followed by a series of explosions. The magic tower was reduced to a pile of ruins in the terrible explosion. More than 1,000 ET soldiers were instantly buried in the ruins, and hundreds of them fell to the ground unconscious, missing arms and legs. Until the moment of death, they still firmly believed that they were the extraordinary troops guarding the city lord, but they did not know that the Spear of God-killing had long moved out of the magic tower, and they were just victims of the confused Narxans. From the beginning to the end, only a few key characters knew about Google and Kellis's plan. The information known to most people was just false information he deliberately released. There were no elite mages in the magic tower, only a small pile of half-charged energy crystals. Watching the dragon bird calmly leave, after blowing up the magic tower, Kellis's eyes were as cold as ice. Yerubis, the Narxans are about to attack the city. Remember, once that angel appears, release all your energy for me. You must kill the angel of the Emerald Territory, and don't give the other party any chance to escape. Yes, Lord Kellis. Zaya folded her wings, and landed lightly in the open space deliberately left by the soldiers. Under the soldiers' reverent eyes, Lester jumped off the neck of the silver-winged dragon bird. The alchemical bomb caused the explosion. There are indeed some high-energy explosives in the Mage Tower. If it is the energy storage crystal of the Spear of Godslayer, it makes sense, but isn't this explosion a little too small? Looking at the Emerald Army that had already set up its formation in front of him, Lester frowned. Something is wrong. It's a pity that Evelyn is asleep, otherwise it would be a good idea to let Evelyn go in and investigate. I heard the explosion coming from the city. Is everything going well? Margaret came to Lester after making the final arrangements. She found that her lord seemed to be a little bit wrong. It went very smoothly. It can even be said that it went so smoothly that it is a little unbelievable. Margaret, I have some doubts about whether the information transmitted by Lance and Edwin is true or false. Is that secret army really in the magic tower? The place I blew up, could it be arranged by others? The words that had not yet been spoken were gently blocked by the woman's index finger, and Lester looked stunned. Lester, I know you are worried about mishap, but you have to understand that as a leader, we can never look back after making a decision. Everything is going well now, at least on the surface. Lance and Edwin have made sacrifices, and there are indeed many healers stationed in the magic tower. We have done well enough. No plan in this world can be completed 100%. If you are really worried about mishap, then protect us secretly. I believe you have the ability. You are always omnipotent, my follower, my husband, my lord. After being kissed by Margaret and watching Margaret leave, Lester's expression relaxed a little. He has mastered so many extraordinary powers. Even if the spear of god killing is not in the magic tower, what can he do? You are right. In the face of absolute power, any conspiracy will appear pale and powerless. Miss Ha spread her wings and appeared in the sky again in the spotlight. Although she didn't want to admit it, she really enjoyed this feeling of being a god. 4,000 meters away was a towering wall as high as 20 meters. What came into view was a sky full of light arrows and exploding energy balls. All attacks were blocked by a thin layer of transparent arc-shaped blue ice. Miss Han knew that this was the man she had chosen to be with for her whole life, who was protecting her. With his protection, she could go forward and use all her strength on the attack to break through the wall that mortals had spent hundreds of years to build. The blazing power in her body gradually became turbulent under deliberate guidance. Miss Ha slowly raised the fire rune blade from her mother in her hand and began to charge it. She was very sure that if she struck with her sword, hundreds of people would die. When she was a child, she might have considered whether her behavior was just, but the man taught her an eternal truth. The world is neither black nor white, but a delicate gray. War is not about right or wrong. Since ancient times, human beings have been fighting for something they desire: honor, food, spouse, and resources. Everything can become the fuse of the struggle. Unless everyone can get the same things, everyone can get enough things to use, and everyone can truly achieve complete equality. Only in this way can human beings put down their swords and live together happily. Obviously, this is absolutely impossible to happen, even more difficult than the destruction of the world. In fact, everyone, every force, and every country has its own position, and is fighting for its own position. War is the cruelest and most violent side of human nature. A flag unites a group of people and robs another group of people of their own righteousness. This is the essence of war. It is ridiculous to seek justice in war. Seeing the essence of war, you will understand that, as long as you are a human, you need to be responsible for your position. Miss Ha raised the fire rune blade high, and 5 meters of red flames gushed out from the tip of the sword. The power contained is enough to melt everything in the world. She grew up in the Emerald Territory and was loyal to Lester. The Hedi people are the Emerald Territory and are Lester's enemies. This is why she swung her sword. This reason is enough. Finally, the update time has been restored to 12 AM every day, which is cause for celebration. Next, I will make up for the 4 updates on the basis of stable updates. By the way, don't scold me or abandon the book after reading the next chapter. Just vote. The interesting plot has just begun. Chapter 398, Spear of God Killer. Time goes back to 3 minutes ago. The target appears. The magic stone begins to charge. The Hedi people took action after receiving the order. In a low building, 120 fist-sized transparent energy storage crystals were arranged according to a certain rule. In the crisscrossing crystal lines, there was a purple polyhedron crystal standing on a quartz base in the center. The 14 purple crystals were the size of an adult's palm. The crystal was engraved with a mysterious symbol. As the 120 Hedi mages continued to flow the mana they had prepared into the magic stone through the energy storage crystals, the magic symbol of the magic stone became brighter and brighter, forming a power grid like mana tied in the air. Boom. A deafening explosion sounded outside the house, but the mages present remained calm and input the last bit of energy in the energy storage crystals into the magic stone. As the last energy storage crystal became dim, the magic stone in the center of the magic circle automatically detached from the quartz base and floated in the air in the violent energy, rotating at high speed. The power within the divine stone was constantly transforming rapidly between violent and gentle. During the transformation process, the energy level was raised at an alarming speed. After reaching the critical point, the rotation speed of the Divine Stone slowed down, and it stood still in the air and kept trembling. Begin to draw the power of the Divine Stone. The 120 elite mages who received the order slowly guided the magical energy in the purple Divine Stone to flow toward the sky. The magical energy turned around and flowed autonomously to an inconspicuous stone arrow tower like a fountain. Looking at the translucent energy tide flowing in front of him like a holy river, Yerubis, who was holding the gemstone staff, did not dare to neglect it and quickly began to recite the spell. A small magic circle was formed at the front of the staff. The pure energy absorbed and catalyzed by the Divine Stone began to reshape. The whole process was silent and extremely fast. In the case of the restlessness of the element, no mage actually discovered that the spear of spiritual light that gradually emitted fatal fluctuations had taken shape. Coldly looking at the brutal angel who had already slashed the wall with a sword, full of hatred, Yerubis also integrated the last bit of the energy of the Divine Stone into the magic circle, and locked the angel who was in the air for the second time to accumulate energy. Winged cold-blooded monster, your death is coming. As soon as the voice fell, the gem at the front of Yerubis' staff instantly shattered into crystals all over the sky. While the male wizard fell back and fell to the ground, the magic circle was completely integrated into the arm-sized light spear. Without the suppression attribute of the magic circle, the 1 meter 2 meter long light spear that burst out with terrible pressure directly tore the space barrier of the material realm and disappeared at the speed of light. In less than a blink of an eye, the light spear pierced through the barrier in front of the angel and shot into the boundless deep space through the divine body. The golden divine power began to dissipate, the wings disappeared, the divine sword fell out of his hand, and the winged angel finally fell from the air. Confirming that the light spear accurately hit the enemy, Yerubis breathed a sigh of relief and laughed excitedly. Foolish Narxans. Look, this is a power that only gods can possess. Overestimating your own abilities will eventually lead to destruction. Don't think that you are the only ones who possess extraordinary powers. Repent for your arrogance. Things happened so fast that people's minds could not even consider what was happening. Most of the soldiers of the Emerald Army only saw a flash of white light passing through the sky, and then the war angel they revered fell from the sky. It looked like the situation was not good. For a while, the Emerald Army fell into a dead silence. Margaret's heart was cold, and the woman trembled and opened her lips, but did not say anything. She didn't know whether Miss Hap, who had her eyes closed, was dead or not, but she knew that the worst had happened. Margaret, who had experienced many battles, was like a helpless little girl at this moment. In addition to being full of self-blame in her heart, there was also fear deep in her bones. She knew best where this fear came from. She didn't know what men would do, but she knew that men at this moment were the most terrifying. Under the stagnant and suffocating low pressure, the man opened his mouth and spoke calmly. Zaya, transform into a dragon. The tall woman following the man did not say a word and directly transformed into a dragon in a ball of white light. Pressing his right hand, which was emitting green light, on the angel's chest, which had a big hole, Lester picked up the fire rune blade, hugged the angel, and jumped onto the dragon's neck, looking at Margaret. Retreat. Obviously, the city wall had collapsed in half, and the enemy's god-killing spear was no longer effective. The situation was extremely favorable to the soldiers of the Emerald Territory. Obviously, as long as the Black Guards and the Dragon Lizard Cavalry rushed forward, they could capture the North Sea Fortress. Obviously, there were so many reasons to continue fighting. Margaret opened her mouth. Although she felt a little regretful, she did not have the courage to refute. Yes, Margaret, don't blame yourself, and don't feel sorry. This is my mistake. I will personally avenge the Hedi people. Watching the man riding the dragon bird to the south, Margaret wiped the cold sweat from her head and looked around. She found that many black guards had already sat on the ground with weak legs. After the man left, many pale-faced soldiers dared to breathe heavily. Tell Alice that it's time to retreat. Yes. Watching the arrogant Narxans leave in disgrace, the soldiers on the North Sea Fortress cheered for the victors. Beside Keylasa, Yerubis said respectfully, "My lord, do you want the soldiers to leave the city to pursue?" The Lord of Hedi shook his head. "No, Guga knows what to do. It's a pity. It would be great if such an angel could be used by me. Zaya under her flapped her wings desperately, stimulating the power of the wind element to speed up the flight speed, making the temperature so low that water drops could freeze. Using the shield to protect himself and Mishap, Lester kept calling Alina's name, asking Alina to continue to input life force into the dying Mishap's body, so that the last ray of life could pull Mishap's shaky soul to continue to remain in the body, rather than being pulled away by the underworld. At this moment, Mishap's life force was constantly fading. The angel who lost most of her chest was no different from a dead person. If it weren't for the fact that there was always a trace of weak life flowing in Mishap's body, Lester estimated that he might go crazy. I'm here, Mishap, I'm here, hold on, we will be in the Emerald Territory soon. With me and Hina here, you will definitely be able to recover. Mishap, who had stopped breathing, naturally could not respond to the man's call. Instead, after Zaya's clear cry, a cold and ethereal voice came from behind the man. She's dead, a powerful and pure soul. I must ensure that she returns to her mother's arms. Mishap, listen to me. I'll be there soon. You'll be fine. Lester, she's dead. I'm here too. Shut up. She's not dead. Staring at the crazy man, Yang Ling sighed softly. You do have the capital to save her, but it will cost a huge price. At this moment, I think you have made your choice. Yang Ling walked behind the man with light steps, opened her arms, and hugged the man's back. The man trembled, but did not break free, but continued to inject vitality into Mishap's body. Lester, a visitor from another world. This hug is my last farewell to you. The plot is speeding up, and we have to do something. Guess which alliance equipment the Godstone of the Spear of God Killing is? Including those that have been deleted. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 399 Thunder, Lightning, Rain and You Are All God's Grace. The sky suddenly changed, and the sky that was clear just now was now covered with dark clouds. On the Shurima continent, halfway up the Targon, a sexy woman with a unique figure looked up at the sky blankly. The woman in a cotton coat raised the star moon staff, and her golden eyes seemed to have penetrated through layers of obstacles, and saw the immortal holy city above the astral world. The woman had tender and smooth light purple skin and long ears like an elf, a cute horn on her forehead, and gentle eyebrows. It was Soraka who had been watching on the Targon for more than 10 years, and saved thousands of lives, by persuading climbers to go down the mountain. The sky is showing strange signs. Why is Justice angry? Soraka had just said a word, and several terrifying lightning bolts fell from the sky of the Targon, and the sound of thunder echoed in the ears, making the Raka people living under the Targon prostrate themselves and worship. Praise the gods of the astral world loudly. The woman said with a sigh that humans have no idea how dangerous the gods they worship are. Soraka withdrew her gaze from the sky, her face full of worry. After a slight hesitation, she was really worried about the Justice Star Spirit's destruction of the lives of the people, so she decided to use divine magic to predict the reason for the Justice Star Spirit's anger. The woman sat cross-legged on the ground, holding the crescent staff tightly in both hands, and standing in front of her. The power of the star god flashed with a green light, and descended from the sky. It came along the staff to the woman's front, and formed an illusory light curtain. The divine power burned the woman's body like hellfire. Soraka's hands and forearms gave off a burnt smell, and soon her arm bones like white jade were exposed. The woman gritted her teeth, and endured the pain of the flesh and blood starting to fall off, piercing her bone marrow and soul, and finally saw a man's figure in the light curtain. It seemed that the man was flying in the air, and the calm man was holding a woman who had lost her breath. With just one glance, Soraka could see that the man was suppressing his violence like a bloodthirsty and crazy beast. After memorizing the man's unforgettable handsome face, Soraka focused her eyes on the woman, lingering on her broken chest. It is because of you that justice is angry. You are the chosen incarnation of justice, hissing. I can't hold on any longer. The last thing that flashed across the light curtain was a stunning city, and then it dissipated in the air like bubbles. Before her arms were completely burned into skeletons, Soraka stopped the prophecy magic. Even though she was used to being in a state of pain, the woman couldn't breathe at this moment and almost fainted. If the pain suffered by treating humans is 1, then the pain suffered by casting the prophecy magic is 20. This price is not small, but she does not regret it. It finally started to rain heavily. The heavy rain seemed to crush people's backs. It hit people's bodies with crackling sounds, and the strong wind blew the leaky tents and bonfires all over the place. Soraka, who had just healed herself with pain, had to give up the idea of packing her bags. She stood up from the ground with difficulty, looked back at her warm home for the last time, picked up her crescent staff, and staggered down the mountain. As if it was fate, a young Raka was walking up the hill with a wooden spear in his hand. "Are you the legendary horned demon?" Looking at the figure approaching him in the rain, the startled Raka boy took a step back in fear and then tightly grasped the wooden spear in his hand and pointed it at the stranger. The boy stood stubbornly in place, staring at Soraka with hostile eyes, and refused to run away. "Go back, kid. The land of glory you seek has now become a GD. The gods are angry. Just like this rain and thunder. This night, no one can sleep well. Ahem. Ahem." Soraka, who had just suffered a severe injury and was extremely weak, still stopped and spoke to the boy in a sporadic tone. "Besides the road that you can't see the end of, you still have many choices. Shut up, big monster. Don't try to trick me into becoming a warrior of the tribe. You are a deceiving demon. It came when I was about to accept the trial, which means that the rain and thunder are just a test for me to embark on the road of glory. This is the will of the gods. As long as I pass the trial, I can become the strongest. And you are just a deceiving obstacle that blocks my heart. Get out of the way." Pushing down the one-horned demon in front of him, the young Laka was full of excitement, as if he had really defeated the demon. Looking back at the demon, who fell in the mud and couldn't stand up, the young man laughed loudly. "Don't try to stop me, ugly evil demon." Looking up, Soraka could only watch an ignorant soul sadly become a sacrifice for the gods to vent their anger. She raised her hand in the direction where the boy left, but she trembled after hearing the word demon. She slowly retracted her hand and covered her aching heart. Some injuries are more painful than physical pain. "I'm sorry." What is regrettable is that the gentle kindness was blown away by the storm in an instant, and it seemed that only coldness and grayness were left between heaven and earth. "The gods are watching me. The gods are watching my road to glory. No one in the family has ever had such a trial vision. This is the grace of the gods, the grace of heaven. No one can stop me from moving forward. No one can. After I go back, everyone will look up to me, because I'm the son of the gods, the son of the stars. I will become the greatest Raka, surpassing those monks of the sun sect and the moon sect. No one can call me a coward again. No one." I don't know how long I walked. The big raindrops hit my face with a crackling sound. My cheeks were swollen. The purple blue boy leaned on a wooden spear and covered his crotch and walked forward stubbornly. After turning a corner, the wind and rain suddenly disappeared. A pale narrow road as narrow as 1 meter appeared in front of me. Not far from the narrow road was a frozen snow peak. Icicles were everywhere. The storm turned into a blizzard a few dozen meters away in the blink of an eye. Looking at this scene in front of him, the Raka boy smiled proudly. "I've only climbed halfway, but I've reached the last section of the snowy road. Haha, my father has long said that the warriors of Laka chosen by God only need to make minimal efforts to climb to the top of the God's peak under the God's gaze and receive the blessing of God's power. There is no doubt that I'm the warrior chosen by God after defeating the devil and the hardships." The distance was getting shorter and shorter, and the blurred scenery was getting closer. After passing the next corner of the snowy road, a low slope appeared in front of him. On the low slope, there was a sacred starlight pillar that soared into the sky. In the light pillar, he seemed to see the city of heaven made of gold and silver. Everything was as expected. The gods had been waiting for him here for a long time, ready to put on the warrior's crown for him. He ran forward a few steps, threw down the wooden spear, and crawled on the ground. "Great Lord of Mount Targon, the high and mighty God, I have passed your test, and I beg you to." Crack. Under Mount Targon, Soraka looked back at the purple lightning flashing across the mountaintop. sighed softly, and disappeared in the rain. The college entrance examination is over, summer vacation is coming, come, and read the book. Chapter 400. Above the Star Realm. On the top of Mount Targon, the place called the Astral Realm by the gods. After closing the Astral Realm channel connecting to the material realm, the anger of the Justice Star Spirit finally dissipated a little. Justice Star Spirit, that human was a good experiment, but you killed him like this, and turned him into a pile of worthless ashes. Star Spirit language. A colorful little man made of starlight jumped out of the Astral Realm channel, dancing with his hands and feet, and the strange rhythm that seemed to be whispering in the starry sky was also a bit mocking, and he deserved a beating. Look, you are the god that symbolizes justice. Killing people like this is not just at all. Star Spirit language. Looking at his companion Curiosity with spiritual vision, Justice calmly responded, he attacked our compatriots, trampled on the glory we bestowed on mankind, and profaned the sacred Star Realm. As an ant, he actually wanted to take a shortcut to pass the sacred trial. Such a lazy ant has no value except death. Star Spirit language. Brief explanations will be omitted in subsequent conversations between Star Spirits. Oh, yes, you are right. That broken road was pulled out by itself, and let people step on it. In the unfriendly gaze of the Star Spirit of Justice, the curious Star Spirit raised his hand and asked, well, I don't mean anything else. In fact, I came here to ask you, are you going to do it yourself this time? Deal with the guy who almost ruined your good deeds? The curious Star Spirit looked curiously at the Star Spirit of Justice with a righteous face, but the Star Spirit of Justice shook his head. My plan almost failed, but it was impossible. How could the things we deliberately left behind really kill our vessels? Everything is in my plan. After this time, my divine body incarnation will be even more perfect than before. Even endless time is very precious to us. Curious Star Spirit, I have confirmed that the mortal who forcibly sees the divine incarnation from me in Runeland is an outsider from the universe. His appearance is still a mystery. I think you have also investigated this outsider. He is like a runaway who suddenly appeared in Runeland. He is born with the ability to block our perception. That's right, that mortal is indeed not ordinary. Hearing the words of the Justice Star Spirit, the curious Star Spirit finally put away his frivolous attitude and his voice was a little serious. It's just, you don't mean to say, Aurelian? The Justice Star Spirit shook his head. Not necessarily. I think you should know how peculiar Runeterra is. It's like a land of miracles that never stops. Unpredictable things are always born on this peculiar planet. The entire universe seems to be affected by Runeterra. I think you should understand how incredible this is for the extraordinary universe. In fact, any controllable accident can bring us new gains. From the successful use of Runeterra to bind Aurelian, we should understand how precious Runeterra is. Rooted in Runeterra, we will have endless time and fun. Unfortunately, even after tens of thousands of years, we still can't figure out the origin and end of Runeterra. We don't even know if Runeterra has its own consciousness. She lets us control it, but always surprises us in some unexpected places. Perhaps, the outsider from another universe is the purger chosen by Runeterra. So what you mean, is that he was summoned by Runeterra to kill the Worm of Justice? Knowing that he was with the Star Dragon clan, the curious Star Spirit resumed his frivolous tone. He cares if Aurelian Sol loses control, but he doesn't care if a mortal ant poses a threat to him. The power that the Protoss has mastered for thousands of years in ruling and controlling Runeland is unimaginable to any mortal. The things that can make the Protoss feel troublesome can be counted on one hand. The Justice Protoss refuted mercilessly. It may also be to kill the curious insect. Have you heard that curiosity kills the cat? Ahaha. I understand. You don't take action yourself, but you will take action. After he follows your plan, he will become your chess piece to experiment with Runeland, right? Interesting watching the curious Protoss knocking on his chest with a bang bang bang. The Justice Protoss did not respond to the curious Protoss's words. I heard that your experiment in Shurima has made new progress. Hey, what are you doing? Don't think about Maisie. He didn't turn into Kun. I just want to know what can be created after the blood of the Titans and the Star Dragons is combined. The Emerald Territory is the most suitable test site. I think you also need a powerful test subject, right? Okay, you want my little Zixie to be a tool? Let's go and see first. The two people who were talking disappeared into the star portal. The next second, at the junction of the void corrosion area of Acathia in the Shurima continent, in a magic test site located 1,000 meters underground, two sleeping human great magicians opened their eyes without warning and climbed out of the bed with golden eyes. In addition, there are hundreds of human strongmen who are responsible for magic research and have their mana imprisoned. At this moment, they can only force themselves into a sleeping state under the divine law. The Star Spirit of Justice occupied the body of a female wizard, while the Star Spirit of Curiosity occupied the body of an old man. They used their powerful divinity to directly wipe out the souls of two humans, but the Star God didn't care at all. Such temporary incarnations are inexhaustible. On the contrary, the exclusive incarnations that are specially cultivated with care like the Star Spirit of Justice are worthy of careful care. Only special incarnations can always maintain the resonance of divinity. When needed, the gods will not wipe out the soul of the original owner. When not occupying the channel, the original owner can improve their strength. It can be said to be the best choice for idle players. After responding politely, the two of them did not wear clothes and walked past hundreds of sleepers who looked like corpses and walked to the core area of the magic test field. Stopping in front of a door sealed by magic, Curiosity raised his right hand and the door made of dense silver slowly opened. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.